Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website, and for guest speakers joining us at the table, please do not turn your microphones off. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Sharland, Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Lavelle. Here. Mr. Mosley, Mrs. Kell-Smith, Ms. Warwick.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Ms. Strasburger, Chair.
Here.
5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before the city council. Profanity will not be permitted. Please state your name and neighborhood for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Carmen Brown. Carmen Brown? Not seeing Ms. Brown. Our next registered speaker is Tony Moreno. Tony Moreno? There being no registered speakers, we will now take comments from those in the audience wishing to speak. Are there any speakers wishing to come to the podium?
My name is Hank Commodore. I used to be the Dean of Students in New Kent School District. I've raised over 300 kids in the juvenile system. We have a program that says help the needy, not the greedy, in the youth program. I've spoke here many times about getting on board with love and kindness. Love and kindness in the schools we have. We're having a program for the veterans, and we want everybody to come out, giving God, praying for all the people all over the world. With the veterans and everything, we do this out of our own pockets. We've never had a proclamation here. We've never had a grant or anything like this. I've put out millions of dollars. We've done things in East Liberty and everywhere, which everybody knows. And what it is about kids with love and kindness. Leechburg, if you Google my name, Hank Commodore, you will see. In Leechburg School District, they said, be the change. The kids are saying, be the change with love and kindness. We have a thing in Zone 28, we're honoring all the veterans. We want all your council members to come out. We talked to the mayor about coming out. We got mayors coming out, police officers coming out. It's all free. We donate it out of our own pockets. The youth program is Zone 28 on the 26th from 4 to 8. It's free to everybody. We want everybody to come out and support so we have love and kindness together. I came out, my brother got murdered in 1994, shot in the back, cold-blooded murder, but we don't fight violence or violence. I came out with these shirts that says, get on board with love. All lives matter, to do the right thing. Stop the violence with wisdom, with the sun shining on all the continents. We all walking together as one. Black lives matter, to do the right thing. White lives matter, to do the right thing. Chinese lives matter, to do the right thing. All lives matter to do, and that's what we put in schools. In Leamington School, we have all these kids wearing shirts and everything like this. That's what we promote. And we want everybody on board together. We'd like all you councilmen to come out. I have a sheet in your mailbox right now to come out and support this. If you don't talk about it, be about it. Do the right thing in schools and everything like that. And we love you guys for doing what you do. That's what it's all about. We're all in this together. That's the story. Love and kindness up in the schools. Put them on the walls, love and kindness for all of us. So we'll do the right thing. Wisdom is doing the right thing. I'm going to leave you with that. Wisdom is doing the right thing by all. The animals are saying, what is wrong with these humans? That's the story. We need to get on board. If the kids can say be the change, we need to be the change and do the right thing. Thank you very much, Council, and come on out and support these kids and support these veterans and support everybody. We've had some better councilmen, he said he's coming out and going to the schools and talk to the kids about love and kindness together. Quit playing around. We need to go in ourselves and talk to these kids. Don't sit back here on the councilman board or the school board. Go in and talk to the kids ourselves.
Thank you very much.
I love you guys. Support them. Do the right thing. And everybody do the right thing. That's the main thing right there.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Michael Bonnewell. I'm a resident of Pittsburgh. I'll start with this man with his June 13th celebration, and you still are trying to withhold his money. I mean, a deal is a deal. Why is he just still not have the money? $125,000 is a lot of money. He's bringing in major entertainers, Master P, and all the other things to celebrate the freedom of slavery. Let them have their celebration and give them their money. And also, I was speaking to a random person yesterday named Phil. He's a resident his whole life of Pittsburgh. He's got approved for his unemployment process in December. It is now May, and he has no unemployment. He hasn't got his Visa card. He's still waiting, and he calls the office, and he can't get a hold of people. Like, what is the disparity? What's going on with the government here? I hear you guys are under investigation. I mean, we need to figure out how to get this problems that we have in the city solved. McGahee, Port, East Pittsburgh, all of Pittsburgh is suffering except it seems for like the north side. And I'm not trying to pick and choose and say one side's better than the other side, but it's like we need to come together as one, because where we go one, we go all, and we're all in this together. It rains upon the righteous, it also rains upon the wicked, and it rains upon the birds, the bees, and everything else. So I never really prepare much, but how do we come together as one and solve the problems in the city as one? Because we're all a community, black, white, yellow, green, doesn't matter. We're all God's children. Everything belongs to God. That's really all I have to say. Please give this man his money, and let's celebrate a June 13th, a peaceful celebration, and bring money to Pittsburgh. I've come up with a few ideas, and I would like to speak to Senator Casey, but I need more help in order to help you solve your guys' problems. God bless. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Howard H.P. Jackson, BPET. Grew up with NACP all my life in Pittsburgh. The reflection, let me tell you what the most dangerous thing that J. Edgar Hoover said about Negroes. It was about unifying. Woodrow Wilson, the greatest fear was unifying with Negroes. NACP, Juneteenth, veterans, before the wars in this country, and the way that like our people built this country on free labor. Martin Luther King telling you, about the immigrants, and we were promised a mule and 40 acres. Now the reflection is today is a new birth in Pittsburgh. Juneteenth, I'm not talking about Woodrow's new birth. I'm talking about the Juneteenth in Pittsburgh. I want you to reflect that. The opportunity, the transformation. See, I witnessed 50 years of unity and of a transition. 50 years of unity. We said it loud, and I'm black and I'm proud. See the transition over the years. Now it's African Americans, Juneteenth history. I just reflected African Americans, Juneteenth history in Pittsburgh. I don't know what the complications are, the financial dilemmas, but we always been second-class citizens to be accepted through the military, through building a White House. Our children don't know our history, how it's been redirected of our history. Identity is important today. We have a responsibility to unify a man that helped bring identity 11 years ago, an opportunity to unify our people in this city. Identity for being second-class citizens, and we have a chance with hope and respect. I hope you will support the Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I was actually very impressed by HP today. I was a little worried. Good afternoon again for the second day in a row. My name is William Anderson. I am chair of the Allegheny County Democratic Black Caucus, and I am chief of staff for the Democratic National Committee Black Caucus, and also I am the only African-American male elected to the PA Democratic State Committee. So as this is a fully democratically controlled county, I will be speaking on a partisan level today. As a representative of all the African Americans, both in America and Allegheny County, I am truly and deeply disheartened by what is going on with our Juneteenth celebration. As I was on the phone requesting that Vice President Kamala Harris come and march in our Juneteenth celebration this year, I click over and I get a call from B. Marshall saying that the celebration was in jeopardy because all of a sudden the mayor has decided to reallocate funds that we fought for, with a white administration to help and support our African American community. So everyone around the country is asking me why? Why, when last year this administration was happy to march in the Juneteenth celebration, hand by hand, side by side with B. Marshall, march in the celebration and take part up to the 11 years in developing this celebration, and then all of a sudden, 3 months, 4 months later, decide, oh, I don't need B. Marshall, I can do this myself. This is just another example of crab in a barrel syndrome that, we need to eliminate as African Americans if we are ever going to move forward. And it is shameful that an administration would attempt to derail and basically hijack and use Republican tactics in a democratically controlled town. So this is no different than what is happening to African Americans in Florida and in other countries when our rights are being taken away. And when we attempt to celebrate our history, and as the great HP said, we built this country. And we can't even have a celebration that has been nonviolent, that has been successful and brought millions of dollars to the city of Pittsburgh and has been shown a benefit both to the white and the African American community. So in this hearing, I am requesting, both in my official capacity and as a taxpayer and a resident and an African American, that you do not allow this atrocity to occur, because you are being watched around the country. And I will be reporting back both to the White House and to the rest of our Democratic colleagues, which, as I'm in my official capacity wearing my Biden t-shirt today, that, the White House will not let any administration, stop us from becoming.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, good morning. I'm B. Marshall. So for the past 11 years, we have produced and hosted the Juneteenth celebration in the city of Pittsburgh, and it's been pretty successful. I sent you guys emails this morning that I wanted to get on the record, tracking that history of what we have done in the city of Pittsburgh for economic development and for the growth of the city of Pittsburgh. We are kind of puzzled as to this Juneteenth RSP. We thought it was going to be an open and fair process, and then we later learned that it was not an open and fair process, and we know that you guys are going to vote today, have a preliminary vote on that today, and we want you to actually review the RFP process, maybe review the applications, see what the requirements were for the RFP, and then make a determination based on that, as opposed to what other people might be telling you to do or trying to steer you to do. We think that the RFP process was very flawed because it was given to a person that is a personal promotional company for the mayor's office, which is just a tragedy to us. One thing that I know for sure, that no other organization can out-qualify us for Juneteenth celebrations. We have brought Juneteenth in the city for 11 years. Last year, we brought in 50,000 people. We generated $4.2 million for the city of Pittsburgh. On that qualification alone, we think we meet the criteria for that funding. So we appreciate you guys considering that when you do your deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Any further speakers? There being no further speakers, we will move on to our standing committees agenda. First committee is Finance and Law Committee, chaired by myself.
Bill 472, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement or agreements with Bounce Marketing and Events to assist in supporting the arts and related artistic production services for a public Juneteenth event in 2024 for an amount not to exceed $125,000 and for the payment of the cost thereof.
Motion to approve with discussion.
With discussion?
Second.
Do we have a second? Second. Council President Lavelle.
Thank you. I see Director Pollock in the audience. If he would please come forward. I see Director Cornell. If he would please come forward. And I'm going to ask Director McDevitt, our Budget Director, to also come to the table. And what I want to do is walk through the facts as I know them relative to both the authorizing contract for the initial $250,000 as well as the current contract, resolution, coming before us to authorize a $125,000 payment. And I just want to walk through the facts as I know them so that we can set sort of a baseline understanding, and then absolutely members and yourself can contextualize and provide additional context that I may be missing. So to begin, on the effective date of April 17, 2023, there was Resolution 1354, which passed, and the most relevant part to that being Section 1, the mayor on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh is hereby authorized to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Poise Foundation to assist in supporting the arts and related production services for the 2023 and 2024 Western Pennsylvania Juneteenth Homecoming celebration for a sum not to exceed $250,000 over 2 years, subject to annual appropriation by City Council. Is that accurate? Yes. Okay. Next most relevant piece is on September 5th, 2023, there was a letter that was sent to the controller. Of all the things in there, the director of OMB, Jake Pollock, on behalf of the Mayor Gainey, informed the controller via letter that the administration intended to change the authorizing resolution scope to 1 year and do a competitive bidding process for 2024 funds encumbered in the resolution 1354, and after selecting winning bidder would resubmit to City Council. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's more changing the resolution scope. Obviously, the mayor or OMB can't do that. We were changing the encumbrance to reflect the agreement that had been signed, which was for the first year and $125,000. But yes, we were releasing the other encumbered funds.
Okay. So what you go to speaks to the next point, which is then on September 8th, there was a contract that was executed with the Poise Foundation. A contract was entered in between the city and the Poise Foundation for 1 year at a maximum amount not to exceed $125,000 from JDE account number yada yada. The named beneficiary of this contract was Arts Organization, which was defined as B. Marshall Productions, LLC. B. Marshall was not signatory to this contract. The contract was performed and paid in full in an amount of $125,000 for work performed in 2023. Also in paragraph 14B of the contract, allowed for the city to terminate early for any reason with 30 days written notice. So although the authorizing legislation from this council said you can expend $125,000 for 2 years, the contract that was actually entered into Poise Foundation allowed for 1 year's spending. That contract was performed and satisfied, and then signed by Poise, signed by B. Marshall, and fulfilled.
B. Marshall was not a signatory on the contract.
B. Marshall was not signatory, but the contract was performed and was paid out. Correct?
His contract, I would anticipate, was between Poise and himself or his organization. But other than that, your recollection is correct.
Okay. Then next, an RFP process was conducted, and a winner was obviously selected. I believe the RFP was let on March 6th and was closed on April 15th.
April 5th.
April 5th? I apologize. So it was released on March 6th, closed on April 5th. There were 3 respondents: Bounce Marketing and Events, Poise Foundation, and Rainbow Serpent, which I'll consider sort of like an artist collective when I looked them up. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And now, finally, we now hear on March 14th, there was a new bill that was issued, new resolution to come before City Council to encumber those funds that was selected by the RFP.
The date, it was just the date that the resolution was entered. I think you said March. I believe it was May 14th.
Yes, May 14th.
Yeah.
I apologize. Is it accurate in my notes? I misspoke. And so that's what we're now here to discuss.
Correct.
If council approves this funding, what happens?
If this engagement were approved, then the administration will be authorized to enter an agreement with Bounce Marketing and Events, which was the provider selected via the RFP process, to provide $125,000 in funding towards a Juneteenth event.
Effectively, and this my wording, correct me if I'm wrong, a city-sponsored Juneteenth
That's correct.
event.
The RFP was for city sponsorship of the event, which included $125,000 in funding.
Is that similar to what we've done for July 4th?
It is, yes. In many respects, because at present the city of Pittsburgh, internally organizes or produces the July 4th event because there isn't a community organization that does that. But the level of expenditure is identical. We've authorized $125,000 in city funds to both events.
If we do not pass this today, if we vote this down, what happens?
There would be no authorization to enter an agreement with the selected provider, so there would not be a city-sponsored Juneteenth celebration until such time as there was an agreement to enter one.
And would there then be a vehicle to provide B. Marshall Productions LLC, I think that's what it's called, $125,000?
If the resolution from last year authorizing agreements with the Poise Foundation would remain in effect, so there would be legislative authorization to do that. It would be contrary to the RFP, the procurement process that we just conducted, seeking proposals for this support. So it would be certainly outside of the procurement process that we've conducted, but the existing legislative authorization, so far as I know, remains in effect.
Still exists, but
Yeah.
there would be no contract.
There would be no contract. No.
Okay.
There is no contract that would be a vehicle for us to move that funding to Poise. The agreement that was signed last year only covered 2023 and only covered $125,000, all of which has been paid and contract satisfied and closed.
So the authorization by council still exists. It's just up to the administration to enter into that contract agreement, which just because it's authorized doesn't mean they have to do it.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. I really was hoping that we could get to a point where we would sit down and work together and try to figure this out. There's no reason we can't have two Juneteenths, but I do think that all this explanation is really not sitting well with the public. What they're hearing is that the guy who bought Juneteenth to Pittsburgh is being pushed out. All these facts, all these details don't really matter. But what I will say is, when we're talking about some of this, I need to know, there was never an RFP brought forward to council for the legislation. There was never an authorization from council for the RFP process. So, I'm wondering where our team is and where our directors and our clerks and our law department all are to make sure that we're getting the things that we need to get too. So who would make sure that we had an RFP for something like that? On our side of the hall, who would be responsible for that? I think it's time we start holding our team accountable for making sure we're getting the information we need to get.
I don't believe legally we require to authorize someone, the administration,
so let me hear that from the solicitor.
put out an
Solicitor, could you come
RFP.
to the table, please? I want her to say that publicly. Good morning. Good morning.
I I'm not aware of, I haven't looked at this issue, so
And
I'm
Solicitor,
happy to look
I
into
apologize because I
anything.
know I called you at the table. I actually just found this out myself this morning. And so what I'm going to say is that there's still 125,000 additional funds enactment 2016, or 216, I'm sorry, of 2023 for 2024. Intent of council, 2,000 money. And so I'm hearing like all this different stuff people are sending to me, and I have not had a chance to look into it. But what is making me upset is I want to make sure that we're doing things right. I really think we missed an opportunity to sit down and try to find a private funder for Juneteenth, for B. Marshall, to help him get that, to show that we're working in good faith with the black community and with the person who bought Juneteenth to Pittsburgh, that we're working in good faith, not trying to be the right fighters, not trying to be the one who's solving everything, but a way to bring our city together. And this Juneteenth did that for 11 years. And so now there's such a division and there's such anger, and I'm thinking all we could have done was maybe ask the sheriff's office to help us out with to offset some of the costs for public safety, to ask for private funders to help us with some stuff. So for me, when I'm hearing that there's all these other issues, and I'm just getting a lot of text messages today, I'm trying to understand where we are with all this stuff and why we're not just pausing today, sitting down with everyone and try to come up with a way that we can still continue to have. I don't even know Fantasy, but I have nothing against her. It's great that she got a contract. I mean, whether she's the mayor, lots of mayors give contracts to lots of people that they knew. So for me, that's not the issue. For me, the issue is the disrespect that, and I want to say, I'll be the first to say, I tell B. Marshall all the time, your emails are horrendous. Stop sending emails attacking people. Since I tell him I'm the B. Whisperer since 2011. So because I don't like the way, our people were talked to. And so I think that what we have to do is maybe work with B, get somebody who's an administrator to work with the elected officials and with all levels of government so that they are working through things and through concerns without anybody being attacked or feeling, like that they're being disrespected. And at the same time, help get some private funding into this. I don't know that we should be using public dollars for any of this, to be honest with you. I think we're struggling now with our public dollars for a lot of things. So it's not that I think that we should do that, but I do think we should be trying to work with the person who bought Juneteenth here to Pittsburgh. So I would like to know whether or not what your opinion is, your legal opinion, whether or not we had to have an RFP come for council.
Councilwoman, may I respond?
You can respond, but I'm going to say you're going to be recorded, so
Sure.
make sure
I
it's
understand.
right. Make sure it's
I
accurate.
understand.
Oh, can I also say, I'm tired of you coming to the table and being the one to take the heat for everything. I think there are a lot of people that are making a lot of decisions, and you're the one at the table. So I do appreciate that, and I do appreciate that you're constantly making phone calls and helping us. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. I will, as you've asked the solicitor for legal guidance on something, I'm not going to answer that question, except to say that as a matter of past practice, we've not brought resolutions to the table requesting authorization to release an RFP. It's when an RFP process has resulted in a selection that we come for authorization to enter into a contract, which is what is happening today. Again, I'll let the solicitor speak to the legal components behind that. As relates to June, yeah.
Can I just ask you then, should the original legislation be amended? Does anybody know that?
The legislation from last year that authorized a 2-year agreement?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
This
For a one-year commitment instead of a 2-year?
No.
So we're just going to ignore what city council says and just do whatever?
I mean, you authorized a 2-year agreement for $250,000.
So my budget director's telling us we could be ignored. That's okay. I want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Similar to with the not to exceed amount on the contract, the contract that was entered into is neither longer than nor more expensive than the authorization. We could not have done a 3-year contract for $375,000 because that would have exceeded council's authorization. The contract we entered was less than the total authorization. So I'd say it's on that basis that we believe that the agreement that was entered into is consistent with the authorization that we had.
Okay, and I have some other information I do want to share with you.
Okay.
But I'm going to talk to you about it. But I think these are things, there's enough questions raised that we should be sitting here trying to figure out a way to work together. I mean, I actually think in favor and in support of the black community that we can show them that we are working in good faith with the person who brought Juneteenth to Pittsburgh, with how the mayor wants to move forward. Our first black mayor, we also want to support him. And I think that there's a way that we should be able to work together with everyone. And I understand that there's a lot of issues, but I know that when people put their heads together, they can try to figure stuff out.
And to that broader question, I just want to make clear, there is nothing preventing any Juneteenth celebration, whether it's the one that is we're seeking authorization to enter a funding agreement for here or another one, from occurring through this award, right? This award would provide a level of funding to partially fund one event that is also would require private fundraising to support it. There's no contractual, there's no requirement that be the only event. I know that Mr. Marshall is currently in a permitting process in front of public safety to continue to move forward with his event. That is a completely separate procedure.
And it's my understanding he had a good meeting yesterday, and I believe the state's trying to help him also with some funding. So there are people trying to help, and I want us to be part of that equation.
I'm not aware of any financial commitment from them. I do know that they're part of the permit.
No, not from the state directly, from private funders.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt of that. They're involved in the permitting process as well, because the selected location is their property, right? So they have to be involved in that process.
So I do want to acknowledge that I know there's a lot of questions whether or not the governor's office is helping, but I do believe that they are behind some of this, making sure that they get some help is what I'm trying to say. And so I don't know what happened, what occurred, but it's my understanding they're trying to help a little bit. So I would just wish we would do it. I think we should sit down and try to figure it all out. I don't think anybody wants to see, maybe I'll call our solicitor to the table. But I'll wait till maybe next round. You can stay there. But I'll maybe wait till next round. If I have to go around second round, I'll go around second round. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Warwick.
Thank you. So just to sort of organize it for myself. So in April of 2023, we voted to dedicate $250,000 to a Juneteenth celebration in the city, and it was Poise that was to receive that funding for.
Yes, that's correct.
Right,
He's named in the legislation.
And then Poise was presumably the fiscal sponsor for B. Marshall Productions.
Yes.
For that first year.
Effectively, yes.
Okay, so just one thing for the record, because we've heard a lot in public comment. I voted on that, and I was here, and if I was here, that means Mayor Gainey was here, because I wasn't in office when Mayor Peduto was in office, so it was in fact Mayor Gainey's administration, just for the record, that gave the initial money toward I just want to clarify that. I will say, I gotta speak to the emails as well, because it is, over the past, I want to say a year, there have been so many emails about this, with what sort of seems like everyone under the sun CC'd. Recently it's sort of gotten to the point where it's like our city employees who are not elected officials are sort of getting, attacked in these emails. That is, not only is it confusing, I can speak for other members, but it's confusing, for me, to the point where you're like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And quite frankly, to the end where I'm just like, ugh, forget it. I just can't even read these emails. So I just want to kind of, and this is I am very supportive of Juneteenth. I marched in the parade with the mayor and other members, all the elected officials last year. It's a great celebration. It's a really fun time. So I just want to say that in terms of the communication. So anyway, so last year, was it always the plan to do a city-sponsored event, sort of like Juneteenth is to 4th of July? Was that always the long-term plan?
Yes. I think it was a priority of the mayor's that he then was seeking legislative authorization to advance to create parity, right, or equity between the celebration of the 4th of July and the celebration of Juneteenth. At the time that we sought legislative authorization last April, the thinking around the best way to achieve that vision and execute on it was still in development, right? And so legislative authorization to dedicate 2 years worth of funding and a possibility to enter into contracts for 2 years was what was pursued with council. In the course of working to prepare those agreements, that work and thinking progressed to the point that we felt it was important to proceed obviously with the funding for 2023 with Poise and the selected event organizer so that year's Juneteenth celebration would occur as planned, which is what occurred, but discussed openly with all of the parties involved the city's intention to award the second year's funding via RFP. We can't use last year's legislative authorization to do that because it named a particular provider, right? So that's why we're here with a new bill to authorize the awarding of a contract based on that RFP to a different event organizer. The actual allocation of the funds, if you note when Council President Lavelle read the resolution, the authorization was subject to annual appropriations. So the actual authorizing of the funds itself is through the budget process, not through the resolution from 2023. The resolution was to enter into the contract. So we exercised some, but not all, of the authority that was authorized in that contract and are here today seeking legislation to award a contract with the other half, the 2024 funds that are in the budget.
Right. Okay. But just to kind of simplify, to kind of get down. So, yeah. I mean, is there a reason that we sort of changed our, decided, like, initially it was going to be Poise with the understanding then that that we changed our minds?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that decision had been made at that point. As with most legislative authorizations for contracts, there's a not to exceed amount. Right, so we requested the necessary authorization to do 1 or 2 years, and then determined to do 1 year, and we're open and honest with all the participants that the second year would be we would proceed with an RFP instead.
That was upfront, like back in
It was in 2023.
2023.
Yes, and certainly before the contract itself were signed, because the contract signed by both sides stated for 1 year. So that would be clearly known at the latest by the point that the contract was signed.
Oh, okay. So all right. So then with the RFP, when did the sort of application process open up for the RFP for this year?
March 6th.
March 6th of when?
2024.
I mean, if I may, and I understand that that seems very close to the time of the event itself.
I'd agree with that statement.
I mean, like, if I'm organizing a major city event, I'd like to know, I'd like to know that I have my 125K to work with a lot earlier than March 6th.
That was when it opened. It didn't close until April 5th.
And one of the reasons...
I mean, even that, I would say, like, I would have, again, it's not my, but it seems like that would have been something to do, like, in November or whatever. I don't know how long it takes to organize a big event, but I assume it takes the bulk of a year.
I would agree with that. Yes, and it's, one of the reasons why it took a little bit longer is the funding for this is through American Rescue Plan dollars. So we wanted to make sure that the RFP was drafted, reviewed by law, to make sure that it moves through all of the necessary Treasury guidelines. And then for the understanding of this council body, is in particular the ARPA line for funding for the arts, and the way that the RFP was structured was very clearly for theatrical, performing, visual arts, some related production services, but that's the way that we're moving this through this body.
Okay. All right. So, okay, so Bounce, Poise, and Rainbow Circle.
Serpent.
What's that?
Rainbow Serpent.
Serpent, sorry. Applied for the RFP. Are we able to see those applications? Are you able to, I know it's still open at this stage. Are you able to talk about those applications, or can we see, I mean, would the public be able to see those applications?
No, the responses to an RFP are not made publicly available. Like, if someone were to submit a right to know request, they aren't sent in response to those until after a contract is signed.
Until after it's signed.
Right. So the responses themselves remain confidential until there is a contract in place.
Okay, so we can't sort of have an understanding of why Bounce was chosen over Poise.
Not in detail. We can speak generally to the questions that to the information that RFP respondents were asked to submit, like what their responses were directed towards, and maybe general impressions of the responses.
Okay, I mean, do you?
Yeah, sure.
I can walk through a little bit of the general process. So
I think, I mean, yeah.
You know, and as listed in the fiscal impact statement, we had representatives from OMB, myself, 2 representatives from Parks and Recreation, and 1 from the mayor's office on the selection committee. We reviewed all of the proposals for really the standard city RFP guidelines, you know, firms' qualifications, experience, references, what the actual response to the scope looks like, the project approach, the plan, the cost proposal, and then there's a separate, you know, MWDBE good faith effort that all respondents are expected to respond to. And as we reviewed all 3 proposals, the selection committee worked through some of the details. We asked follow-up questions to all 3 respondents, and through the discussion that the committee had internally, the decision was that the proposal from Bounce Marketing was the strongest across all of the qualifications. It was very thorough, it was well presented, and it met the requirements as we saw it to meet the scope of the funding and sponsorship as best as it could.
And in particular, this RFP, to Pat's earlier point, placed an emphasis on the degree to which the awarded funds would support local artists and their participation and inclusion in the event. That was an important portion of the required application, that was reviewed to compare the respondents.
That was one of the follow-up questions that we asked. You know, of the scope, which was here's what we would like to see prioritized, funding for artists, visual, performing, theatrical, any other types of arts that could come up, and then the production component. One of the questions we then followed up with was what percentage of these funds would go to local versus national. And as we worked through the contract last year, the priority in that agreement was also clear that the hope of the administration was to move with local groups first, and then if funds remain national. So we expect that language to move into the same sort of agreement with this as well.
So, okay, is Bounce local?
Yes.
Okay.
But in the sense of that criteria, it's about the artists who would be hired, not the
So for the well, I mean, I understand you can't go into that much detail, but so.
But they can.
Well, I'll see if you can. So for the Poise application, was it just a lack of information on that, or was it that like the artists listed were not local versus like the other one that had a list of local artists?
I don't know. Would that get into too much detail?
I don't know. I mean, I'm, you know. So,
I
okay.
think you could probably answer the lack of like the details.
Right. Some of the respondents provided the breakdown of local versus national of what they anticipated in terms of percentages. One of the respondents did not.
Okay. So I want to ask too, because frankly, I have had some headaches with dealing with grants from the city, with my local community, where it's like, and when I say headaches, I mean like mega frustration on my part, right? Of like just trying to like so was there, given like the size of this and whatever, like was there somebody who, was able to just like wade through the emails and just be like, whatever, water off a duck's back and connect with Poise and Mr. Marshall and be like, listen, this is what you got to do. This is the process. This is like, like ABC. This is a new process for you. I know you've done this for a while, but like kind of help them, walk them through.
The openness of the RFP process requires that we not assist one respondent or potential respondent to the exclusion of others. Everyone needs to have access to the same level of information and the same opportunity to respond. We in the follow-up discussions, we ask identical questions to every respondent. All communications to all respondents are the same, unless they regard a specific, if we were asking a question about a specific item that is in their proposal that is not in the other proposals, obviously we can ask those kinds of questions. But in general,
I'm tracking, right?
Yeah.
For fairness. So
Correct.
it's not really like the grant process where
No.
where we could go and do a little.
Correct.
I mean, did you ask, like, with this issue of the artists or whatever? I mean, did you go back and be like, do you have more clarity on A, B, C, or X, Y, Z? Or
Did not have further follow-up.
you didn't ask for further follow-up?
After the initial responses, that the selection committee felt comfortable enough with moving forward.
Moving forward.
And again, that's not atypical, right? Everyone has sent a standard list of follow-up questions, all submit responses, and their application is judged on the basis of their response, similar to the initial RFP itself. The typical, I'm not suggesting this was done in this case, but if someone submits an initial application that doesn't answer a question that is fundamental to the RFP, the response per procurement procedure is not to ask a follow-up question, but actually to treat the responses unresponsive and remove them from the selection process entirely.
Okay. So, I mean, I have to say, I'm still not entirely clear on why we made the decision to move away from, to be like, okay, we have this money, it poises in the legislation, but we're going to, and we already have this large Juneteenth celebration, like why we're going to sort of switch tacks and go with, I'm still not clear on why that decision was made.
To open the process
And do like
up,
a second event, like a second city event.
To open the process, I mean, the intent was to open the process up to a wider array, or to anyone who sought to submit a proposal. And it's the same thinking that goes into our choices not to award sole source contracts or continue contracts with a single vendor for extended periods of time, but rather have an open process for making a selection. We would do the same with the 4th of July. I mean, again, presently we produce the 4th of July celebration in-house, but were we to seek an outside party to do that, it would be via an open process as well.
Were there had people expressed concerns about that money, like being dedicated without an RFP? Like essentially I know council passed it, but did people express concerns about that? Say, for example, from other events or I don't know what, or like other organizations?
I don't know the answer to that. Not to me. That doesn't mean it wasn't the case, but I don't know the answer to that.
And so I guess Councilwoman Smith asked this too, but I'm going to ask again. So if we said no to this, so if we said no to this, that would just say, like, essentially the city is not going to do, like, so if we, so let's say hypothetically, if we were to vote no, the city then would not do its own Juneteenth celebration.
We wouldn't have any authorization to do that.
We wouldn't have, right. So the city wouldn't do its own, the B. Marshall production event would continue. What would happen with that money?
It's somewhat uncharted territory since we've conducted an RFP. I wouldn't be able to answer that right now, whether we could award it to anyone, given that an RFP process was conducted. I'm not sure of the answer to that question.
I mean, essentially, if you voted this legislation down, then they would just have no authorization to enter into contract with this money for anybody.
Certainly, yeah, we would.
Is that your legal opinion?
We would,
I'm not a
I
lawyer,
think,
but-
need
Okay,
to
I'm just
pursue
wondering.
additional legislation at some point. But
And so just so I'm clear, did we approve a second piece of legislation to enter into the contract with Poise just for 2023? Is there?
No.
Sorry, actually, maybe I should amend what I just said, because last year's legislation is still valid. So technically, the administration could enter into an additional agreement or amend their agreement from last year to add an additional year of 2024 and an additional 125,000.
No. That's not what I'm. So
Okay.
so I get it. Last year we voted $250K for not to exceed 2 years, or not to exceed $250K over 2 years to Poise.
Right.
And then you made a contract with Poise for 1 year. Did
And-
we
and
vote on that contract, or did we not have to?
you don't. No,
Because-
the authorization to enter into an agreement. The agreement we entered into was for less time and less money than the authorization
Then the
that we
author.
had.
So that was a contract that was
Correct.
right.
No,
so we
no
didn't-
further action
no
was
further
needed
action
at that
needed
point.
on that one.
And were we to enter into an agreement with Poise for this year, no legislative action would be needed either, because an additional, as Director McDivitt just said, either the 2023 agreement could have been amended, or an additional agreement could have been signed for 2024. The reason that we're here seeking legislative authorization is that the selected respondent to the RFP is not Poise, and thus we need legislative authorization to enter into an agreement with someone else.
Yeah, I'm still not clear on why we need two events. I mean, I get like the idea of opening it up to RFP just for like transparency and whatnot, but it does feel like, we said I mean, I could see like for next year, you know what I mean? Being like, this has been kind of chaotic and sort of, so like for next year, sort of, I don't know. Anyway, I guess I'm going to leave it at that. I'm sure members have other questions, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilman Mosley, and then just to give an on deck, followed by Councilman Charlin, followed by Councilman Coghill. We're still first round.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today. First thing I do want to say is I do want to applaud, Mr. Marshall for the work that he's done over the last, 11 years. But being that Juneteenth, is so important to the record of history, I also just want to make sure that, we're precise about history here in the city. I've been going to Juneteenth events since I was a teenager, and I do appreciate what Mr. Marshall has done. But WAMO did a Juneteenth celebration back in the 90s. Super Cat was at Allegheny Center Mall in the parking lot. That was one of my favorite memories from my childhood. So I applaud Mr. Marshall for carrying on tradition. But we have been celebrating Juneteenth in the city of Pittsburgh for many decades. I just want to make sure that record of history is captured correctly. My first question is just piggybacking off my esteemed colleague, Councilwoman Warwick's question. Could you kind of just dive into the rationale for doing an RFP process? I do remember a couple weeks ago the mayor did put out a statement on social media, and one of the words that stuck out to me, what was scrutiny to whatever level you can speak to, about, the rationale of doing an RFP process versus the process that you went through in 2023.
Sure, and it's the same rationale that we apply to almost every expenditure of public funds via contract, right? Except in very rare circumstances where there are exceptions under the law, right? The expenditure of funds is subject to an open process by which anyone can submit a proposal. Those proposals are judged based on clear criteria, and ultimately the best proposal, whether it be based on price in the case of low bid contracts or based on the quality of the proposal in others, is the one selected, so that there is accountability and transparency as to how those selections were made. That was the thinking here. It's also the reason that we bid, as council approved yesterday, those components of the 4th of July event that we pay for. That was the fireworks, which, just for the clarity, is not where the $125,000 is being spent, is being directed. That is, those fireworks payments are coming from the Special Events Trust Fund, which comes from the sponsorships for the event. So the money that is going to the 4th of July is going similarly to support performers and the inclusion of performers in the event. But in any event, the reason is for the expenditure of public funds to be above reproach, right? That we know that we are proceeding in the best way to the public, for the public, as the custodians of their tax dollars, or in this case, federal funds awarded to us.
Thank you. And I know yesterday during public comments, some other cultural events, were mentioned, like St. Patrick's Day and Little Italy's Day and other kinds of cultural events. Does the city support those events in any way similar to how Juneteenth was supported last year?
No, we don't fund any of those events. Those events go through the special events permitting process, which determines what level of public services they need, police protection, DPW to provide guardrails or barricades. They're charged for the cost of those services. There are, in the application process, there are allowances. So, the first, in some cases, $750 of those costs are waived. In others, I think it goes up to $3,000. So there is some in-kind support to anyone who submits a request, but those are uniform and across the board. And any other costs they pay from funds they raise privately. So in the instance of the St. Patrick's Day Parade, there is a St. Patrick's Day Parade committee that raises the funds to pay those bills.
Okay.
I'll add that I haven't done extensive research, but I did look into it a little bit, and I could not find any legislation in the past where we gave an organization cash like this to put on as a city sponsor an event.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would also distinguish that the way that parades route through special events and permitting is set up in its own chapter of code, different from events like this. So we're distinguishing between the parade aspect of it, which moves through one process, versus an event versus this ARPA-funded sponsorship.
Thank you, Patrick. But my point is that if we're not talking about funding, and we're talking instead about the permitting process, though parades have a different application, the big picture is the same, right? A privately funded organization, usually that raises its money into a nonprofit, seeks the city's permission to hold an event, including street closures and everything else, and then we work with them through a process for a permit that also generates costs.
Thank you for that. And to what degree you can elaborate beyond, the percentage of local performers participating, was there any other kind of top line qualities about the bounce marketing, RFP that stuck out in comparison to the other respondents that you can speak to?
Sure. It was a well-presented proposal. Like I said, there was a great care of effort that went into the presentation of it in the document itself. There was a line item budget provided that made it very easy for the selection committee to go through and say, yes, this is eligible. No, this is not something that these art dollars could sponsor. So it was the easiest to sort through the response to the scope. And for us, the biggest component was, is it falling in line with the appropriate sponsorship uses that we posted in this open RFP?
And my next question is, outside of the $125,000 allocation for the 2023 Juneteenth, was there any additional support in kind or otherwise that the city provided B. Marshall Productions for the 2023 Juneteenth?
I think only what would have been identified through the permitting process and agreed to as a component of the permit. I'm not sure if all those.
I'm not sure. I do not know the answer to that.
I'm not sure that all those invoices have been paid, but those services would have been invoiced.
Okay, and prior, to the decision to do an RFP process in 2024, at any point over, I would say over the last year, 18 months, has there ever been, effort to sit down, with B. Marshall Productions and, identify some sort of formal partnership, with the city at any point during that process?
Well, the decision to pursue with an RFP was articulated again last summer prior to the signing of the contracts and is memorialized in the letter that the council president read, which was in September, but I believe that determination would have been communicated prior to that. Once we've committed to an RFP process, we can't then enter into a partnership outside of that process with anyone who might apply. So I would not say that there was a conversation around a formal partnership because that would undermine the RFP. Understood. But there have been multiple points throughout the year relating to any manner of events that B. Marshall and B. Marshall Productions organizes that are seeking permits or as follow-up to the contractual relationship from 2023 where there was significant communication, but it would not have been to establish a partnership once we had decided to move forward with an RFP, because the RFP would determine who the partner was, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And my final question is, so, hypothetically, if we, did not vote, in support, of this legislation today, does it kind of just, start the process back off? I mean, we're only several weeks out from Juneteenth, and my biggest, concern is if we, restart the clock and start another process, it just seems that money wouldn't be allocated until Labor Day. We'll be long beyond Juneteenth. There
certainly wouldn't be an opportunity to conduct an additional RFP, right? There's not enough time for that. As Director McDivitt has noted and others have noted, the legislative authorization from last year remains valid. But what I don't know sitting here today, and honestly can't answer for you at this time, is having conducted an RFP in which Poise was a respondent, whether exercising that authorization, having conducted an RFP process in which they were not selected, would not violate some other policy or provision. I need to look into an answer for that before I could give you a informed answer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Charlin.
Thank you. Just want to check. Sometimes when I'm virtual, I'm very loud in the chambers. Can you guys hear me, or do I sound okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. First of all, I just really want to applaud you, Director Pollack. This seems like this is pretty challenging here, and it seems like you guys are trying your best to sort it out in the most fair and equitable way. So definitely want to give credit to you for trying to sort through this. I was a staffer at the time. I wasn't here when we first passed this. Does this come out of the Special Events Trust Fund? Where does the money come from?
No, this funding is from the American Rescue Plan allocation for supporting arts and cultural events. That is the reason that the initial request was specifically 2023 and 2024, because we knew that the last opportunity to spend those funds would be in 2024. So this is the last year that funding from that source could be used for this purpose. We would, if moving forward with this type of support in future years, need to identify a different source, which would be part of our upcoming annual budget discussions. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Geez. All right. Now, I do have a question here. The RFP process. Who is on the review committee for an RFP like this?
So RFP committees, the using department, or the department whose budget the funds rest in, determines the composition of the review committee when it releases an RFP. In this case, the department is the Office of Management and Budget. And so the review committee included a representative of our department, as well as 2 representatives of the Department of Parks and Recreation, which we asked them to participate given their role, right, in events of this type, as well as a representative of the mayor's office.
So you mentioned the titles of people, but do we have names of who the people are?
We don't typically. We don't typically provide that, given the level of staff who participate. I'm not sure. Oh, is there anything that prevents us from doing that? Okay. The solicitor is telling me that there's nothing preventing us from doing that. So I will in this case, given the nature of the questions. The members of the review committee were Chief Financial Officer Cornell, Parks and Recreation Director Catherine Vargas, Beth Bliss, also from Parks and Recreation, and Darius Wallace from the mayor's office.
Okay. And then I know you talked a little bit about the other proposals that came in. If you are not going to review or release the proposals, can we at least see the scores from the other proposals?
I will have to defer to the solicitor on that. I'm not sure if she can answer that right now or not. I'll let her speak to that.
The information can be disclosed at the end once the contract is closed, but I recognize the difficulty between the vote versus when it comes in. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Geez, this is challenging here. So, applaud you for trying to work through it and be as transparent with the process as possible. All right, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome.
Thanks.
So I'm going to just be direct and get right to the point. Okay, so in April of 23, I know myself, I was under the impression that these funds would be used for the Poise Foundation and for B. Marshall to continue to do what he has done in the past. That is my assumption. Is that yours?
Well, in that that's what they authorized. Yes. So council authorized us to enter into an agreement with them, right? Meaning that if we, for whatever reason, sought to enter into an agreement instead with someone else, we would have to seek further council authorization.
Okay, so what I'm asking you is, at that time, was there any thought process, were there any talks amongst the administration as to splitting that money and splitting from the Poise Foundation and doing our own Juneteenth? Was that even on the board?
I do think that, I know that the idea of conducting the process by RFP in the future was discussed probably at least at around the same time, but there was no decision made about that at that time. We weren't sure if or how that would be achieved. So as with similar situations, right, based on the information available at the time, we pursued authorization that would allow up to the maximum possible outcome, right? And then within a few months, the decision was more firmly established and communicated to Poise and the other, and B, that we would pursue an RFP in which they were invited to, and welcome to respond, which they did, for the second year's funding.
So we have a known entity that has a good economic impact to the city of Pittsburgh. I'm not sure the amount of years. Mr. Marshall and the Poise Foundation has been doing this, but each year it's grown. Each year it's had a positive fiscal impact on the city of Pittsburgh. So why would we compete with that? Why would we say, throw caution to the wind and say, oh, we're going to have another Juneteenth? Is it, let me just finish, is it conflict of ideas? Is it, do you not agree with the way the Poise Foundation has been running the Juneteenth celebration? Or
the decision was made, the decision and selection was made based on the responses and solely the responses.
To the RFP?
Correct.
I'm saying before we decided to put the RFP out, why would we decide to compete with a known entity that has been successful?
I will say that the idea of opening the process to as wide an array of respondents as possible to determine who might be able to put together an event that best reflected our needs was driven in part. It is a challenge, right? As some other members have noted, the event annually, there are permitting issues both with us and with the state. There are routine arguments and disagreements about cost of the paying of invoices, right? So we did feel that it was appropriate to do an RFP to guide a future selection, given some of those challenges.
To me, this is like having another 4th of July celebration, throwing a separate 4th of July Zambelli, and we'll get some other, fireworks company to come in here and do it. I don't even think Zambelli does anymore. I'm just using it as an example.
There are multiple 4th of July celebrations in the city.
Oh, yeah, there are?
Yeah. I mean,
financed by the city?
No, there would only be one, there would only be one in this case.
Right.
But there are multiple celebrations of the 4th of July throughout the city.
Absolutely. There's multiple Juneteenth celebrations throughout the county, right? I mean,
precisely.
But what we are financing, there's only one 4th of July. We only dedicate certain funds to one 4th of July celebration.
As would be the case here with Juneteenth. We would only be dedicating funds to one.
No, we would be dedicating funds to Poise and Bounce.
We don't have any funds going to Poise this year.
Unless council moves them.
Yes, of course. We are not proposing to fund multiple events this year. We are proposing to fund the selected provider, not 2 events. There's no funding on the table to go to the Poise Foundation and to the Poise Foundation's event under this current legislative proposal.
Okay, I'll go back to when we voted to approve this money. I was under the full impression that this was going to be for the Poise Foundation. Again, this is a known entity, good, positive fiscal impact to the city of Pittsburgh. They've been proven. And for us to step out on our own and say, oh, we're going to do our own right now, just to me is disingenuous. And I feel like we're not holding up to our word. I really do.
That was the case in 2023 under the authorization that council approved. The funding did go to them so I would say your impression of the situation was the case in 2023 based on the legislative authorization that you did vote for. It was nearly a year ago, right, that the decision to pursue an open bid process for this year was made and discussed with the parties. But we don't have your authorization.
Let me stop you there. Why was that decision made? Because did they not agree with the Poise Foundation as to how they were conducting the celebration, or why was that decision made? Can you answer that?
To direct the funding to a particular organization and a particular celebration without an open process is not a best practice.
I don't want to talk the legalities. I want to talk about who and for what reason did we decide that we needed to get away from Poise and have our own celebration? Where was that decision made, and why was that decision made? It'd be different if they weren't successful, I would say. If they were not successful and they didn't have a positive impact to the city of Pittsburgh, by all means, time to move on and look for somebody else. But we have a proven entity here, and we're deciding to go our separate ways.
It's difficult for me to answer that question for you without at least speaking partially to the, as you called them, legalities or the process, because the decision was less than a need to move away from poise and much more a decision of the need to move away from a practice of awarding the funds without an open process that could demonstrate how we had arrived at selecting who we did. So it was not driven by a desire not to fund this event as reflected in the fact that they were one of the respondents.
No, we've heard the expression, you're only as good as your word, right? For me, in April of 23, there's no question that myself, I voted on this figuring that Poise Foundation was going to continue to do what they've been successful at, right? I haven't heard a solid answer from you as to where the administration felt at that time. I think they felt the same way at that time. I don't know what changed. I really don't.
The city's word is expressed in the signed contract, which states 1 year, $125,000.
Okay, here's the deal. I feel like this is one of the most dishonorable things that we have done. I feel like we've broken our word to B. Marshall and the Poise Foundation, and no way in good conscience can I support this. So it's gotten real messy, and it's become a stain on the Juneteenth celebration. Why we couldn't come together and work with this foundation is beyond me. So it's just become messy and crazy and unnecessary. So in no way will I support this, and I hope my colleagues agree. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to follow up on Councilman Coghill's questioning about the creation of a separate second city-sponsored Juneteenth celebration, so that now we'll have, the administration is proposing that we have basically two. And so some questions. I don't know anything about this second one. Will it be?
The respondents
When would you like it to be?
Respondents were required in the RFP to hold the event in the month of June. Juneteenth itself, the holiday, is on a Wednesday this year, so I don't believe any of the events are happening, or the main components of any of the events are happening on Juneteenth itself.
What are the dates for the B. Marshall sponsored one that was to be funded by the Poise Foundation? They've already secured the permit in January of 2024, I believe?
I don't believe they have either their state or city permits yet, but they did announce dates. Pat, do you know those? I do not know those dates. I don't know them off the top of my head. June 14th through the 16th. Thank you. June 14th through the 16th.
Okay, so I assume you're familiar with the application for the B. Marshall one. And if not, I'm assuming someone here at the table can get that information to you, and you could pull it up on one of the computers you have in front of you. There has been an application submitted at Special Events Committee because it is a private event.
There has been an application submitted, yes.
And I would like to see that application.
Okay.
And I would like it brought to the table.
Okay. I don't have access to the Special Events Committee applications, so we'll have to work on that.
Great. Because what I'm trying to picture in my mind is, how are we having two different events? Are they on the same days or in the same place? What is happening here, right? We have an event that has been happening for 11 years downtown. We just heard that there were 50,000 attendees, that it generated $4 million of revenue, which we need, right, for the city, and that the administration is proposing a new festival, a second festival. Does it have a parade, your second festival that you're imagining?
As part of the response, no.
And are you proposing that it have music?
That was part of the proposal, yes.
And are you proposing that it be in the downtown area?
There was no specification for geography other than it's open to the public.
Okay. So I just want everyone in the city to understand this. There are events that are privately held, that are large, and the public probably assumes that they are city-sponsored event, right? And so one of the examples that we've heard other people mention at the table is the very large parade and festival, because we closed down part of downtown for it, which is the St. Patrick's Day Parade, right? That's a great example, right? It's one of the largest in the country, we like to claim, right? It is not a city-sponsored event, correct?
It is not.
It is not. And so it is, but we know it's going to happen every year. Every year we give a proclamation to it. I don't even know how many years it's been going on. It's been going on a very long time. So that is one of the events that does not get any city funding and that we give a permit to. They apply through the Special Events Committee, right? What are the other large events that are private events?
Marathon is one.
That's a great example. The Pittsburgh Marathon, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Sorry? Picklesburg is a great example from my colleague at the table. I love that. Okay, and then, again, for all of our common understanding, the city-sponsored events are things like
4th of July.
4th of July.
4th of July.
Movies in the park.
That's not a large downtown
It's not
event.
a large downtown event. Other than that, there are none.
It really would be the 4th of July.
What about the Labor Day Parade?
No, that's
No, Labor Day is actually also private.
Yes,
Light Up
the
Night.
Labor
What about
Council.
First Night?
First night, I believe, is Allegheny Health Network.
First Night is private. Light Up Night?
We have our own city-county building light up in conjunction with other private events.
Okay, but the kind of citywide events and arts events and things like that that are happening downtown, those are all private. Okay.
The list would be
I
with
have
this one.
another question.
Okay.
Are you planning to do a administratively city-sponsored St. Patrick's Day Parade downtown on the same day as the private St. Patrick's Day Parade?
No.
Great. Are you planning to do a city-sponsored Picklesburg on the same day downtown as the privately held Picklesburg?
No.
Thank goodness. Are you planning on doing a Memorial Day Parade in Lawrenceville on the same day as the Lawrenceville Memorial Day Parade, which is one of the longest running Memorial Day parades in the country?
No.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So what I don't understand here is why we have something that is a private event that has really been successful that we're trying to duplicate and compete with.
The intention is not to duplicate or compete. The intention was to solicit proposals to conduct the event. Again, it could have the
A
selected
second event.
had the poise response been the selected one, then it wouldn't have been. But it is.
Okay, I'm moving on to another point. The second point is that this money that City Council allocated to go to the Poise Foundation can still go to the Poise Foundation.
Correct.
So, we can more, direct you to send it to the Poise Foundation, just like we do with CDBG funds, and not give you the option. We can just say shall, and you should, and then you will. And so we can still do that. I also want to know, what other funds do you have for this city-sponsored one that you're planning on spending?
None.
Okay, so we can vote no on this today, and there isn't going to be a second one.
But there would be no mechanism to compel the agreement to be signed.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear, because I think we were getting a little confused about what are the powers of council, and do we have to do things? And I always like to, say, if it comes to us for a vote, each one of us separately can either vote yes or no.
Correct.
Right? There's no sending something to a vote of council and we have to vote yes. That's just not a thing. That's why we're two separate bodies of government. So those are the options in front of us, right? So we can both vote no on this allocation of funds for a second duplicative Juneteenth. And also we can amend, and we can direct ARPA. We can direct the ARPA we already directed to Poise, and the check has to be cut. Or we can also move other ARPA, because there is a $2 million part
That
for the arts.
second point is not accurate.
I have my staff checking on that. I believe that other cities are actually directing ARPA funds to individual, especially nonprofits.
I didn't.
So I got to look at that.
I wasn't. didn't mean the direction of the ARPA funds. I meant that an agreement would need to be signed in order to extend funds. There's nothing that council could do to compel the agreement to occur. The funding could be authorized as it currently is, but that does not equate to.
Okay, so let me say, okay, so we may differ in our understanding, but you're proposing that if council directs the ARPA funds that already directed to the Poise Foundation, or any different or additional ARPA funds to the Poise Foundation, that the administration might not cut that check.
I'm saying that under the Home Rule Charter, that is the law. That the authorization to enter a contract does not equate a directive to do it, and cannot equate a directive to do it.
And every allocations of funds is a contract?
Not when the city spends the money itself, but when it involves entering an agreement with an outside party, there is an agreement that facilitates that expenditure. Or if it's below
facilitates it. Does it necessitate? Is the contract necessitated?
In this case, I believe it would be, yes.
Why do you believe that? What is this case?
There would need to be.
How is this case different from other cases?
Well, in the event where we are providing funding to someone for a purpose, an agreement stipulating that the funds can only be spent towards the purpose for which they're extended, for example, would be necessary in order for the funding to be consistent with the terms of council's authorization, the terms of the funds themselves and how they were received, right? We couldn't write a check to someone without a document that obligated the recipient to adhere to the terms of the.
Okay, fair enough. So if council voted to allocate the funds that are already allocated or any new funds for a certain purpose, such as the Juneteenth celebration, then that necessitates a contract.
Correct.
And it is an administration's authority under Home Rule Charter to execute contracts.
Correct.
And council cannot compel the execution of a contract, is what you're contending. And so you're saying under the authority of the Home Rule Charter, this administration might not execute that contract.
Yes, that's correct, because there are many questions I'd have to answer prior to saying whether or not that was appropriate, allowable under other law. That's correct.
Such as what kinds of laws?
As I mentioned,
Federal ARPA compliance would be my
Right,
biggest
again, so
concern.
we're doing our own research because it really is there's an entire National League of Cities memo about allocating ARPA funds to the arts that I was just trying to read over there on the side bench. And I believe that I have seen legislative allocations from city councils to individual organizations with ARPA funds.
just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that it would violate those laws. I'm saying that our process would be to examine that before signing a contract. That's something we would do in every instance.
Obligation. Fair
Correct.
enough. Okay. Well, I contend that this is a possible path that we could and should continue to allocate these funds that we already allocated to the Poise Foundation, and that we not reallocate them to a second duplicative downtown Juneteenth celebration. So I'll let there, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. So the RFP process that you had taken on and completed, does that fully satisfy all the requirements? Maybe you're not the one I should be asking, maybe someone on our council side. Is this a typical RFP process that happened here?
I mean, I'm not being involved in the RFP process because that is not something that's under council's jurisdiction. I'm not super familiar with it, but like that is the best practice that council has been encouraging: less waivers, more competitive bidding. So it checks those boxes, but outside of from my perspective, not being involved in it, it seems like kind of late in the game, but still a normal RFP process.
Solicitor, does this RFP process satisfy like RFP process? Like, is it similar to RFP process that we went through for, acquiring who's gonna, who we're gonna buy cameras from for the police?
From everything I've seen on it, it looks standard with the rest of our
Okay.
RFP processes.
Director?
Yes, the process, the RFP itself was based on our normal templates for RFPs, and it laid out criteria that were necessary for us to inquire about for this type of event, particularly in ensuring that the event that would be held was consistent with the rules governing the funding and the intent for the event.
So how many times have you come here to this table and members have questioned you not taking the correct RFP process?
Probably more than I could count.
You've been called disingenuous here. You've been called, you've been questioned several times about a process that we've been asking you to do. Here, you don't have to answer. And here you've done it. And we still don't like it. I'm not saying we, because I'm not going to. The point is, what can you do right?
Leadership could have led a little bit.
I suspect you don't want me to answer that, but I take your point, Councilman.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. We continually ask for the RFP process. We have a whole, I don't want to elaborate on it, but we have a whole process that Councilperson Strasburger is, and our budget director is going through to give us all the, the in and outs of what should happen in an RFP process, when contracts should be done, all this through and through. And, there's a lot of investigative work that goes on to do that. And I would hope that this meets that standard. And yet I'm a little bit beside myself, sitting here listening to other members, just continually, I don't know. What position do we have here? I mean, or is our position just we like this, we don't like that, we like this, we don't like that, until we just like what we want to like? I don't get it. Like, so either we follow the process or we don't. So here you follow the process, and if we don't follow the process, we have a really good reason. So is there a really good reason we shouldn't follow an RFP process for this? If we're going to use, essentially still taxpayer dollars, ARPA funds, whatever. Somehow taxpayers are going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of any reason why we wouldn't follow that process in this case, or why there'd be a justification for a waiver, for example.
I can't say I like all the decisions that are being made at the administration, but we work through it. And so here we have an example of, we want you all to follow an RFP process. I feel like this is like we're working through it. You all follow the RFP process. I don't even have anything else to say.
Thank you. Having exhausted first round, we now move on to second round. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
So I'm going to say that there's a lot to say back to that, but I will just say that first, I don't think I've ever questioned the RFP process. I do appreciate that you've done the RFP process. My concern is that we are not working through this in a way that we're bringing back the black community can still feel pride and not feel like there's a division going on in the black community over Juneteenth. Juneteenth was something that united the community. I would like to see that happen again. I think that I've asked leadership if we could hold, but I think it's going to go down if we don't hold it. I think it's not going to go through. But I do think that we should try to hold it and work through. And if there's a way for Fantasy and B to work together with Poise, I think we should try to figure that out. I don't know that, I do know that we do put other resources. We are, by code, we pay for the Veterans Day Parade. So by code, we have to do that. So for me, I really think that I've asked leadership yesterday to try to work through this a little bit, and I wish that they had, because I don't think we'd be here today right now, making sure that we were trying to get to a place where everybody can work together. I know that I'm hearing a lot of questions about the whole thing. I've been with B from the very beginning. I know B, don't get mad, but I know B can be rough on emails, and there can be some challenges for employees and for other people that have to work with him. Sometimes he's hard on me, and I'll just pick up the phone and call him, and so then that usually settles it. But I know that his event that he does and the events that he does is amazing for the city of Pittsburgh. However he has, I honestly don't even know how he does it, because it's everywhere, all over the place. And they've done things even in my district, and he's worked with, a museum in our area to put in a Juneteenth display. So I want to see B to continue to be a part of this. I think it's wrong to come in and do this. I think it's wrong that we're sitting here with 4 white people telling us what we should be doing with Juneteenth. But I also think that I've heard enough from the community that they really want us to figure this out and work it. And I hope that we can. I hope that we can work it out some way. I'd like to see us to do one Juneteenth and have them work together. If that's not a possibility, I'd like to see us get private dollars. I don't want to see public dollars going to any of these events, to be honest with you. But if we're going to put public dollars towards events, I didn't even know what Juneteenth was till B. Marshall bought it to the city of Pittsburgh. He bought it to the city of Pittsburgh. And, he did do a lot, and he did push a lot. But I'll be honest, in the very beginning, he had to push a lot. I saw a lot of times where he was not getting the same reception and the same treatment as other people. So I think he had to do I think he felt he did what he had to do for the black community at the time, and for him and for this event. And because of that, we now have, it's now a city holiday. So I would suggest that we hold it and just try to sit down with the administration. I also want to see the mayor have what he wants. I think that we can't continue to say how great the black events are, and yet we're totally disregarding the black mayor and what he wants. I think it would be good to sit down together and try to figure out how we can work with B, with Fantasy, who I heard she does great work. So I think maybe this could be a new beginning. Maybe they can have a team, maybe a new company. But I would like to see them work together in some way and try to figure this out. I think that at least having that conversation is something we owe it to the public. It's at least us coming together at different times and having a conversation. Otherwise, I don't see how this is going to pass today. So I'm asking, to please, let's hold it for 1 week. Would there be a willingness to have that conversation?
I don't know the answer to that question. Because both are respondents to the RFP, I don't want to speak for any of the respondents themselves or what we could or couldn't facilitate. I understand your intention, and obviously it's within council's power to make a decision as whether to hold or not hold, but it would be irresponsible of me to say whether or not in that intervening week that would be possible or not. So I don't want to say that. I don't want to say one way or the other.
Okay.
If I may, we did explicitly ask, are you open to any collaboration with other respondents for a Juneteenth celebration? We asked that to all 3 respondents. Poise declined.
Okay, so Poise
at that time.
I do know that.
Yes.
I do know that. I did hear that. But I'm thinking maybe if we're all sitting down together and trying to say, for the betterment of Pittsburgh, we need to get our act together. For the betterment of Pittsburgh, we need to do this, working together in a more collaborative way. And I just think for the betterment of Pittsburgh, and this is not just affects our black community, a lot of people enjoy Juneteenth and learn from Juneteenth. So I think that it would be better for us to all try to sit down one more time with council and with all of us at different points and just say, look, we've got to come together with something. And I would love to be able to help in some way. But I do want to also say, I have to clarify this because, Solicitor, you and I got into it a little bit on emails. Council has a right to see the RFP respondents. Everything council asks for. We are not outside, we are inside. And so I don't want to hear anymore that we don't have the right to see things. We absolutely do. And that's also in the law. And so if council asks for something and somebody doesn't send it to us, it's considered malfeasance. So I just want to say that part. I don't want to hear anymore that council's not able to see stuff, because we are. I don't want to see it. But I'm happy that we at least have some clarification of what council can and cannot do. But anyway, that's it for me. I think that we should hold it for 1 week, or at least recess the meeting and maybe try to talk through it a little bit. Otherwise, I'd hate to see Fantasy and the mayor not get what they want, and I hate to not see B. Marshall be respected and get what he's been doing for 11 years for the city of Pittsburgh. And I think it was maybe been before that, because when I first met him, I thought, who is this guy? And so he came into the office and he had an event, Stop the Violence, over at Stage AE. And I think I was one of 10 people there. And they grew so much now to 50,000 people. So he's done a great job. So thank you, B, for all the work you've done. That's it for me.
Councilman Lavelle.
Thank you. I saw Chief Wheatley come in the room, and he's leaning forward and rocking as if he has something he wants to contribute to the conversation. So in a second, I'll ask you to come forward, Chief. One, B. Marshall's Juneteenth celebration is a phenomenal celebration. I've attended it for many years. It's terrific. All the members who at this table are speaking about how much they support it, how much they would like to have it funded, should absolutely wear their bully pulpit hat, beat down the foundations, beat down corporations, and bring as much funding to that festival as possible. That should absolutely occur. I doubt that will occur, but it should occur. However, what we're discussing is what we can do, what our abilities are to direct city funding. And I sort of want to pick up where Councilwoman Gross and Director Pollock's conversation ended. We may not like what the administration has chosen to do here. That's fine. We cannot compel them to spend a single dollar. We do not have that ability. I've seen it happen for years in our budgetary process where we say, I'm putting $500,000 for this spray park. That spray park still hasn't been done yet, right? Because we cannot force the administration to expend those dollars. We do not have that ability. We can authorize it. We can say this is what we believe you should do. In this scenario, we can say we're upset that you didn't do it. However, we can't force them to do it. So with that in mind, if members vote this down, understand you are not supporting B. Marshall's production. You're not supporting that Juneteenth festival. That's not what you're doing. Which leads me to two other parts of this conversation that have been somewhat troubling for me as I sit here and sort of listen to it. On numerous occasions, there's been essentially, why would we have two festivals? I don't think there's a scenario in the world where council members would sit here and say, we shouldn't have more than one July 4th celebration. We shouldn't have more than one St. Patrick's Day celebration. We shouldn't have more than one Little Italy celebration. We shouldn't do any of that. But now we're going to question having two black festivals. To me, that's bothersome. We have now two federally recognized Independence Days in our country. One is July 4th. The city puts forward money to support that. The second is now Juneteenth. And the city is proposing to put forward money to support that independence holiday. If this council votes down this, again, you're not supporting the Juneteenth festival because you are directing no resources to it. What you are doing is saying we do not want city money to sponsor a Juneteenth festival sponsored by the city in the same manner in which we vote to allocate money to July 4th, the first Independence Day, but we do not want to pay for a second Independence Day that is now federally recognized. To me, that is very troubling. Chief Wheatley?
I wanted to tell you you could leave a long time ago.
Thank you. Again, I noted that you came in and it appeared as if you had something you wanted to add to the conversation.
No, I appreciate that, Council President Lavelle. I wanted to, as one of the principal people in the administration that's been responsible to try to manage the relationship and to try to work through the issues of our Juneteenth situation, to have a chance to address council. Because I want to make sure you all understand kind of how we got here. When we first came in, and I appreciate what you said, Councilwoman Kell Smith, about the particular individual who has brought Juneteenth here. But Juneteenth is a holiday. It's not owned by one person. It's a holiday that's owned by all of us. And so the mayor, when he first came in, who has always been a supporter of this particular individual in this event from the very beginning, when we came in, and you, of course, noticed because we had several conversations when we first came in about expenses and financial situations that had to be addressed for us to make sure this happened in our first year. The mayor was so committed to that, that this event took place. He did what you and others suggested. We forgave debt that was owed to the city. We reached out and did our own personal fundraising. Me personally, the mayor asked me to help raise money for this event because the event organizer said, you know, the in-kind is great, but we need resources. So we helped raise almost $100,000 worth of additional resources to the event. And we said at that time, because according to the organizer, there was a commitment from the prior administration to spend resources that nowhere in any contracts, any process did we ever see any language to commit resources and dollars. But the mayor so supported this event that he said, let's try to figure out a way to help make that a reality. So the first year we did that. Second year came around and the mayor challenged the administration, figure out a way to support this event because we want to treat it like we do the 4th of July. That's how important this holiday is to this administration. We need to make sure people understand in this city that we have 2 national Independence Days. Our team went and looked and said, look, we think ARPA dollars could be used in a way to support artists to make this happen. We think there's authorization that we can do this. We came to you all agreed. We worked the situation with poise. I want to make sure you have the context because when we committed that money last year, we were blasted for doing what we thought was the right thing. Committed $125,000 to help support an event, and then there was a press conference calling for what we did not do as it relates to in-kind donation. Again, we received calls from some of you around this table asking the administration to figure out how we can work through what we were being blasted for even after we gave taxpayer dollars to a private event organizer to do what we require other private event organizers to pay for. And at the same time, we got additional requests from other private organizers to say, hey, we just now see on TV the city has donated $125,000 of taxpayer dollars to a private event organizer. We would like some of that too. So the mayor said, legal and financial team, we cannot sustain this. But because this is a national Independence Day that we want to support, figure out a way for us to do that. That team came back with a suggestion and said, hey, look, it is proper protocol to RFP a city-sponsored event where we make anyone eligible to apply to be the city organizer for that event. As long as we use these resources to pay artists or the performance of conducting this event, we can do that. So we got our team to work because again, the mayor has been committed, is committed to celebrating and supporting this National Independence Day that is all of ours. Now, that opportunity was open to everyone who wanted it. It was advertised, it was specifically communicated to the event organizer of Juneteenth right now. There was an entity that applied on his behalf. There was a selection that went through. There was no personal animosity. There was no favoritism. As if this process is what this process is. Sometimes you get selected, sometimes you don't, but it's not a competition or it's not a either or situation. Because before this administration, in help of council, actually invested real dollars to this event was being put on without these dollars. So this event, and the event organizer has said it publicly, it's going to happen with the dollars or not with the dollars. So it's not like this was something that was going to end the conversation around if someone who's done the event for 11 years or not were able to do it. They're still able to do it. But this is something that the city itself has a responsibility to own. Just like we have a responsibility for 4th of July. Because this mayor has said, if the city does a 4th of July event, it should do a Juneteenth event. We would love to have a partner who helps us make it a great event, but we're going to have a city recognize the event. Because that way, we take all of the other BS out of the conversation. Can we give police support? Can we donate public safety? We take all of that out of the equation. When it's a city thing, we know exactly what we can give, and taxpayers know exactly what we can give. This is a conversation with our taxpayers. And so I would encourage us to not delay even further, because like you said, we're already in the 8 ball. We were late with getting it out. We had some wonderful responses, but the winner of our response, our open process, they need to know that these dollars are coming so we can have an actual good event, something that recognizes the significance of this event. It's not in competition. It's not going to be on the same day. As you know, this event organizer has multiple days. It's not even going to be on one of the multiple days. We're going to be able to recognize, have more cultural opportunities for our city to celebrate and enjoy. And we would encourage, really, really encourage you all. If you want to work on a process to make this better next year, okay, we're willing, the administration is willing and open. Like we've always said, we're willing to sit down and say, hey, how we do it? Because we actually would like to do both an RFP that RSB both the 4th of July and Juneteenth, so we can have really special, creative days. We would love to do that. We would love to have work in partnership with you to do that. But don't hold us up this year. We're down the road. We would love to encourage you to move this forward, allow for us to have our city-sponsored Juneteenth event, and work with us as we move to make this a greater and greater experience in the future. So thank you.
Oh, I forgot I still had the floor. I have nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Warwick.
Thank you, Chief, for coming to the table. It was definitely helpful. I'm going to say I am torn. I do feel very torn, but I am also inclined to sort of, follow your lead and follow the mayor's lead for, obvious reasons, I think. Just generally, and I will say this to every community group, every developer, anybody who wants to deal with the city in general. Our city employees are just like employees anywhere else, right? Like, the easier it is to work with, the easier it is to work with you, the easier it is to work with us, and things go more smoothly, overall. And I agree with Councilman Wilson. We are constantly talking about RFP, right? Like transparency RFPs. That is something that we are saying regularly at the table. So, and I know that we can't see the applications, but I'm starting to sort of the Poise Foundation should know how to do an application for an RFP. They should know how to do that for their, so, if the application that was submitted didn't meet the standards, that's unfortunate and, probably a disservice to Mr. Marshall. That's unfortunate because that's why we're in this situation. And you know, and I know that the mayor committed, you know, and that is the thing, right, about getting, you know, other events coming, be like, why would you support Juneteenth when you didn't support this other event? And it's because the mayor is so committed to this, you know, uplifting this holiday in a way that has never been done before and isn't, you know, hasn't been done across the country. And so that's why, right, that's why the 250,000. I mean, I will fight. If it were my decision, I feel like I might just like bite the bullet and just go ahead with this year and do what we did last year with the, you know what I mean, just to avoid all the discord. But I also, you know, fully understand the points that you're making, Chief. So, you know, and then just doing an RFP because it is nice that we are supporting this, right? It is important that we're supporting this event as an exception to just events in general, private, you know, and why making it a city event sort of gets rid of all that, those questions of like, you know, why them, not us? And, you know, I think why this event, not other events, is abundantly obvious and should be to everybody, you know, just in society. But unfortunately, we do have people who question that. So, you know, and this was the solution to do a city event. It's unfortunate, though, that funding couldn't have gone. Yeah, I'm torn. I will say I'm inclined, though, to follow the mayor's lead on this. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here, Chief Wheatley. So I wrote down that the Gainey administration kind of did in-kind contributions to the existing Juneteenth event, such as forgiving debt, you said covering costs that had been billed by the city. And then also raised additional outside funds. Can you say a little bit more about those funds and where the funds came from?
Foundations and corporations, but I think the event organizer would be better able to answer the questions about what came in. But clearly, on behalf of the council, then Council President Kel Smith, having a conversation with her, having a conversation with the event organizer, and trying to help support this event, we raised additional resources.
And just for the sake of clarity, this is for the 2022 event, just so
Yes.
we all have the timeline.
Yep.
And the public has the timeline correct.
Yeah.
The debts would have been for the 2022.
No, the debts would have been for the 2021 event.
21.
Unpaid invoices that still existed in 2022. Those were forgiven as part of the ability
did
to
that
hold the
every year, though.
2022 event.
Mm-hmm. They did that every year. Mm-hmm. And then, because that definitely is something that council members have had their own experience with for much, much smaller events, right? Like who gets billed what, God knows, for the entire 10 years, multiple administrations that I've been sitting here. Why did this tiny neighborhood event get these outrageously high event bills? And actually the Gainey administration has been methodically trying to make reasonable and consistent application fees, and I do appreciate that. I have literally had neighborhood events killed before this administration because they got like thousands of dollars of bills for street closures, for policing at every street corner. Whereas we know we have volunteers at street corners for open streets, a massive event. And yet a Sunday morning stroll on Morningside Avenue was receiving a bill for the city for $15,000.
Yeah.
And so they can't hold the event. That event doesn't happen anymore. So that was then, right? That's some like 6, 7, 8 years ago now, maybe 6 years ago. And that was unfortunate. We had other events too. There were District 4 events that stopped happening because of the outrageous bills that were being applied. Anyway, so that's a whole different can of worms. So I do appreciate that. And I want to clarify that in my line of questioning before, I did specifically ask, not that I'm not trying to ban multiple Juneteenth events from happening around the world or around the region or around the city. Just like I'm not trying to ban multiple fireworks events or St. Patrick's Day events. What I'm asking is that we not compete with the established events, right? And so that is a separate thing that I would appreciate colleagues not putting words in my mouth. And so
we don't compete with the St. Patrick's Day Parade, and we don't have plans to.
And we're not competing with this event. Again, to clarify what our intentions are, the Juneteenth that everyone loves and celebrates, including our mayor, happens over a period of days. The event the city is going to have as its official city-sponsored event is later in the month. It's outside of the window. It's not in competition. It is an additional opportunity to celebrate officially from the city a national holiday.
Okay, so that is good information that I certainly didn't have, and I don't think anyone on council had, because we were really at the beginning of this bill today, which is in standing committee, which was introduced 8 days ago, and no one had explained that. So that's very helpful new information. And so should we just amplify and expand on the celebrating of Juneteenth during the months of June is a very different proposition. I still contend that council is not compelled to fight over this one allocation of $125,000. We can allocate. You have proposed in front of us that we allocate this specific $125,000 to this city-sponsored Juneteenth, which would be additive. And you're proposing not competitive.
Right.
There are still other funds, and then we get to a second issue, which we don't need to actually take time on today because it's not technically in front of us. We're not amending the first allocation, but we kind of are actually. But still, there's $2 million allocated to the arts in ARPA, and there's probably still a remaining $40 million of ARPA in hand. They're allocated for all kinds of things. And so then we get to a debate that we can probably not need to resolve in this standing committee, which is, can a city, and I have my staff, I'm yelling at them in my text messages, find me an example, because it's been my impression that other cities have absolutely, city councils have allocated ARPA funds to specific organizations, and that is entirely possible. And so that is an opportunity in front of us. Even if we agree that we should support a additive, enhanced city celebration of Juneteenth. So I'm just going to leave that there, because I think for me, that's what's in front of me as a decision. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to be clear. I never called you disingenuous. I never called the mayor disingenuous. I'm calling anybody in April 23 who voted on this allocation thinking it was going to the Poise Foundation to throw on the celebration is disingenuous, okay? So I haven't got a clear answer whether at the time the administration was thinking that, or I know me personally, I absolutely thought this was to continue the good work that B. Marshall has done.
Sure, and I would say that your understanding of the bill that was in front of you was correct, right? And that it had that intended effect in 2023, right? Because it did fund that event at that time. You're being asked now for a yes or no vote on a different approach, right? Based on decisions and steps that we took in between. So I think your vote at the time and the assumptions you made at the time were correct. We did not make a final decision to pursue a different approach until later for some of the reasons Chief Wheatley just said. Old habits die really hard. This was an open question until later in that year and informed by a bunch of things that happened in between. The decision to move to an RFP was based on a variety of factors, and it is today that we are asking for a different approach to be employed.
Right. So you can understand why I feel, if I were to vote for this today, that I feel I wouldn't be keeping my word. Because at the time when I voted on this, I originally thought, well, this is for the current celebration that's been so successful, and the allocation was for that. So do you understand how I would feel, where I feel like I'm going back on my word?
I certainly understand that you feel the way how you described it, and I think that that's valid. I firmly believe that your vote last year was to authorize the administration to take steps to achieve that, and so you in my opinion kept your word in authorizing it, and then other steps are necessary from there. So I don't see any disjunction.
Okay, and I'm not opposed to a city-held celebration. I'm not. I am opposed to taking the money that I voted for, knowing and thinking it was going to go to the Poise Foundation. That's what I'm opposed about, okay? I'm nothing against another celebration.
Can I say something, Councilman? Out of all due respect, I really respect you, and I want you to receive what I'm saying in that regard. Don't look at this as if we're asking you to go back on your word, because at the time when we brought this to you, I think we're heading in the same direction. But just like anything else, when you get hit with new information, when you get a clear picture, especially when you understand that what we are setting is a precedent, and we're trying to correct, to Councilwoman Gross's point, when we took a larger view, there are a lot of organizations and folk who are doing great work in the city that has to pay the full weight of what the city is requiring it to do that great work. And when we try to identify how we can make this sustainable, because if we say, if you in your heart believe Juneteenth should be celebrated, irrespective of who's organizing it, that it should be celebrated and that it is one of our national holidays, then don't the city have a responsibility to make sure that happens each and every year, no matter how it happens? It happens every year. And then we have to say, what's the fair and equitable way to do that? So that if I'm the Pride organizers who do a great function every year, that is something that we should celebrate and do, but it's not a national holiday. So what separates them in the Juneteenth celebration? Because if we don't have that in a clarity and a process and in an equal and equitable way, then we're getting ourselves as a city caught up in a never-ending cycle that's unfair. So we are hoping that new information helped us in determining that we need to do this process. And again, if council in its wisdom say, hey, look, next year we want to have more involvement in figuring this out, and we want to see if we can reconcile this in some form or fashion, the administration is open to having a conversation. But we think if we need to start this, and we need to make this a more traditional thing that becomes habitual, so that everybody knows come the 4th of July or come June 19th, there's going to be a celebration that happens, and it's going to be something that's going to be spectacular for the people of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Wheatley, and I also have a great deal of respect for you, and with Memorial Day fast approaching, thank you for your service. I know you're an ex-Marine, but you had mentioned fairness. I don't feel like this is fair. I just don't, taking what this organization thought that they had to work with years to come, I would have gladly voted for a separate fund, for what you're proposing. I would have gladly done it. Take it from ARPA, still those funds are there, bring it to us, speedy that right through, honestly. So it's the manner of what it's done, in which it's done. It's the, again, I don't feel like it's fair. I don't.
Respectfully, I would disagree in that the agreement that was signed was a one-year agreement.
Understood.
Makes clear
Understood.
that there was not a guaranteed expectation of the next year's funding for the organization.
Right. And I'll go back to, if anybody at this table or anybody in the administration at that time had thoughts of their own celebration, and that money was earmarked for that, nobody discussed it with me. In fact, I didn't hear this until this year, really, So never did I think, and if somebody's here that can say, oh yes, we were always thinking about throwing our own celebration and using some of those funds or half of those funds for that. Bring them to me. Tell them, put them at the table for me.
What I'm saying is that at the time that a one-year agreement was what was agreed to, we communicated clearly that the next year, to the applicant, that we would be RFPing the support for the second year. So that was known as of last summer.
When did we make that agreement? When did we say that?
last year. Some of the documents are signed in September,
Okay.
but that would have been communicated over, so then say August.
So we approved the money in April,
Correct.
but you're saying we then said in September
Yes.
that, we're going to, look at maybe allocating.
An open RFP process.
Now, when we talk about RFP and, how many contracts? We all know the issues and the troubles surrounding no bid contracts, right? Has Bounce ever thrown a Juneteenth celebration?
I don't know about a Juneteenth celebration.
Not a Juneteenth, but they've done national celebrations. They've worked with national organizations. They've done several celebrations here. An annual celebration at the August Wilson House that happens every year that's grown, that is a spectacular event. So they are experienced event planning organization and agency.
Yeah, I do not doubt their qualifications. I've heard nothing but good things about them, honestly. But the fact is, they've not thrown a Juneteenth celebration. Not to say that they couldn't, not that they couldn't pull it off successfully, but if ever there was an instance where this could be a no-bid contract, it's this. Have we never thought of that? Or
That was in effect what the 2023
Right,
agreement was.
right.
And that was not a well-received approach in some ways. That again, you heard Chief Wheatley
I wouldn't have a
refer
problem
to
with
the
that. I would
criticism.
not have a problem with that because this gentleman and the Poise Foundation are the only ones that have been successful and showed that they could pull it off. And again, I would be glad to support funding, ARPA funding, from a separate pot for the mayor and the administration and the city to have its own celebration. I would be glad to do that. So why don't we just do that? And why don't we stick to what we originally and what I initially thought, and I think most people at this table thought, that this was to support the Poise Foundation.
Councilman, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor. Councilman, I think Councilwoman Gross put an idea on the table that is totally in council's wheelhouse. If you want to, she suggested that you all can look at additional resources to allocate in that fashion. And if that's what your will is, that's your will.
Well,
but for us, I think it's critical for us to get this moving because we need to have these resources available for our chosen event planner to get this event operational. So we need we actually, I'm here at the table to encourage you all to move this as quickly as you can. If you, in your wisdom, you want to have a city-sponsored event happen later in June because our organizer has to have time to organize it.
Right. And that's kind of part of the issue with me is like the late coming of this whole thing, right? It's like, we're gonna do an RFP that started in March, right, for a June celebration, as Councilwoman Warwick said. It's like, talk about a tight time frame. How quickly could we turn around if we were to, allocate ARPA money towards the city's Juneteenth celebration? How quickly could that be turned around?
It would require legislation.
Sure.
That's depending on the number of, a waiver of Rule 8 is several weeks. That takes several weeks.
Several weeks?
Yeah.
Well, that's not the end of the world. I mean,
It'll be the end of our celebration.
Several weeks?
Because we're already past deadlines, Councilman. And again, I'll take the ownership of, we ran into delays in getting our process together and to get to the bureaucracy of getting the RFP together and getting it scored and getting it turned around. But we are already in red flag territory, and any other delays would hamper our abilities to really do a well thought out planning process. The event, because of the event organizer has already great relationships, and by the way, and I'm not sure if I'm out of legal steps here, but this particular proposal put a heavy emphasis on support of local artists, which meets the mandate of the federal ARPA money. So getting them activated is different than trying to get national artists in. So we have time to really activate that and make that a good event. And again, our event, so you get your head, it's not going to be what you traditionally see at the Juneteenth celebration that is over several days. So we're going to really try to emphasize the local art, the local connection, and the messaging of Juneteenth. So, but we are running up against some deadlines, so we need to get started.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what I'll do is if the administration puts legislation through for $125,000 of ARPA money to be brought to us, I don't care when it is, after June, before June, it could be September. So we can make whole what I feel that we promised. I will vote for the $125,000, but I have to see that legislation first, okay? So I would be willing to do that.
If council wants to do that, to support this particular private event promoter, if you all want to do that, put money together to do that, I think us as administration will engage in that conversation with you. But you have something before you now. We were asked for your support on it.
Yep.
And
So-
we would love to get that moving.
So I'll tell you this, you have a week. I'd like to hold this for a week. I'd like to see that legislation, put it forward. Let's make whole what I felt our promise was.
I guess what I'm saying, Councilman, we're not going
Week's
to
too much?
we're not going, first of all, a week is too much, but we are not going to put forth that legislation. If you all want to engage in a conversation around finding additional money to support this private event promoter, that's a conversation we will engage with you all. But we are interested in the legislation that is before you now and getting your support to move that forward.
So So we're being asked to support this today without knowing what Bounce is proposing, without knowing, well, we hear about music, we hear about
I would love
things
to
like that.
explore with our solicitor why we can't share with you the proposal.
I would love that too. I would love that.
We would love to make the proposals public, but I would have to check with the solicitor. I'm not sure why. I'm not a legal person, so Jake.
Well, nobody here is, but they all act like they are, so it's okay.
The guidance we've received is that it's an open procurement. And while it is an open procurement, we cannot provide information from any of the respondents' responses. That information remains confidential until the procurement is closed upon the signing of a contract.
So
the information becomes available at that point.
So if we approve today, we have Tuesday, till next Tuesday for the final vote. Will we see it before then, before we vote final on this thing? Or
No.
what?
You will not.
So you're asking us to vote on something and we don't even know what they're going to put on. At least we know what Poise does, right?
The process I'm describing is identical for every single RFP and contract that you vote on. We do not provide the responses until we don't provide the responses unless requested, first of all, but we won't respond to those requests only after the contract is signed. So this is not unique. Every RFP you have voted on has been under circumstances in which the responses were not available to you at the time of the vote. So that's not an outlier in this case at all.
I recall being briefed on RFPs as to what their intent is for the money that we're allocating towards them.
Again, that's different than having the responses themselves. I think we've described the.
I heard music. I heard entertainment. What else are they going to do? You can speak.
Can I do this, Mr.
Yes,
Councilman?
please.
If you give us preliminary authority to move forward, let us have a chance to talk back as a team to see what we can share with you generally before you are asked to take a final vote, and what meets without us being in danger of violating any of our procurement laws. I would like to at least touch base with them. You show good faith, we'll show good faith.
Understood. Again, when we talk about good faith, I will not go back on what was my word when I supported it, the $250,000. Okay, good faith is, I will show you good faith in allocating new monies toward the city celebration. I have no problem with that. I've said it time and time again. So there's no problem with that with me. I understand the time constraint, but that's really not my fault. It really isn't.
I get it, Councilman. I just think that, again, you in council have the ability to, at any time, determine where you want to allocate resources. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
If you want to find additional resources, what I'm asking you, if you want to find additional resources, because I'm going to keep framing it this way, because I think this is the way that we've had to do it as an administration. You have to find taxpayer dollars that you want to allocate specifically to a private event promoter for a private event, essentially. because this is, even though how great it is, this is not a city-sponsored event. This is a private event, essentially, that is open to the public. Right? Okay, so that's the onus on council. We as an administration have said we want to create processes that will differentiate and protect us, that if we really celebrate this event and we want this event to be protected, we have to make it a city-sponsored event. And we're asking you to dedicate city taxpayer dollars to a city-sponsored event. You have a bill before you to do that. We would like for you to do that today. We will engage in a conversation of the additional resources for a private event put on by a private event owner. We're open to that conversation.
Well, I'm going to end it with this, okay? I wish this would have been settled earlier. I wish that we could have allocated money where the time constraints weren't such a problem as to our own celebration. I will say, when I take very seriously when I allocate taxpayer dollars to a private entity, like we are with Poise. But what gives me solace is that the economic impact that they've proven to have, I think $4 or $5 million for this event, right? For restaurants, for you name it, right? Probably a dozen different things. Bounce has not proven that. I have no idea. If they're going to produce a good economic impact for the city of Pittsburgh, I know of their reputation. I believe they can, but again, we have a proven entity here, and I feel like we're gambling a little bit in our own celebration, and not knowing if we're going to produce, we're going to get the visitors, are they going to be burned out by Mr. Marshall's, Juneteenth celebration, the competing interest. And as you said, we're not competing, but we are. We're competing for those dollars, no doubt about it, with Poise Foundation.
Well, according to you, we're not competing with dollars because you and council just committed to finding additional dollars. So we're not competing with dollars.
I would do that. I would do that, as I've said. I would be glad to do that. I think that's the way.
We're not competing with dollars. We're not competing on dates. We're not competing with events. So
that's the way this should have been handled.
It's agreed that we will have two great Juneteenth celebrations. We would love to have you move this forward. And we would love to sit and talk to you how we do this.
I think that's the way this should be handled. I'd highly suggest that we keep our commitment to Poise for $250,000. I would suggest also that we move ahead with our own celebration and find the funding to do so. No problem, easy peasy, right?
Thank you.
So, thank you. That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We're still in second round. Councilman Mosley.
Thank you, Chief Wheatley. For being here. I just had a couple, quick questions. You had mentioned that that in lieu of, between April, and September, of 2023, new information, has changed. How many organizations, reached out, to the city, for support for similar events in lieu of them? I guess finally, I think you mentioned like through media reports and things like that you were supporting the Juneteenth. Can you talk a little bit about the organizations and kind of the conundrum that created?
I can't remember the exact number, but it was more than one, two or three, I think, directly contacted me about the support of their events.
And did that play a role in you said new information changes perspective? Was that part of
I don't know if that
new
was
information?
The new information that really had us thinking about how we sustain this was every year we seem to come up with, and it's not just us, this was happening before we came in the office, but every year there seems to always be an issue or several issues around bringing this event to fruition. For whatever number of reasons that it was there. And one of the principal issues was process stuff for permitting, cost of stuff for what we are charging, kind of what you've heard, what we're charging. And the reason why we had to try to figure this out is because for large events, and so we're glad that we have these large events that bring vitality to our city, but for large events, that costs a lot of money for the city. And so, but we needed to create a way that our city could respect and honor a National Independent Day without having these questions every year about if it's going to happen or not. always a threat of being stopped from happening or closed or whatever barriers or whatever comes up because of our process and our bureaucracy. And because we are under so much scrutiny as, and I don't know if it's just because our personality is people don't like or our racial makeup or whatever it is, but we tend to have a lot of eyes on us, and people always threatening to bring us to court. I mean, you know, it's about whatever. So we were trying to be extra careful that we want to create an equitable process to have an event that recognizes this national holiday without getting us into any legal trouble. And on top of it, we heard from many of you around this table that we got to start having more transparent and open processes for picking and choosing what we wanted to do. I mean, I personally had a couple conversations with you who said that to me. So I think all of this stuff came in, and it was just, and Jake is putting his head down because I'm probably overstepping my thing, but our director, deputy mayor, came to me and to the mayor and said, look, I think we really need to create a process that we allow for anybody to apply to be our partner to bring this into fruition. So this event promoter could have applied as well to be our partner to bring this on. We didn't determine what, we said we want to make it open so that when we select someone, they don't have to worry about if they're going to get city permits. They don't have to worry about what the cost of the cops are going to be. We know every year we're going to have a Juneteenth, and it's going to be city sponsored, and we know what we're going to pay, we know what we're going to provide, and it's clear, it's evidence, and it's safe, and it's secure, and it's transparent. And we thought we were doing a good thing. And that new information, we communicated it to people and saying this is the pathway. So we wanted to make sure everybody was aware.
Okay, and my last question, between 2022 and now, can anybody enumerate, how much the city has contributed to the past, Juneteenth under your current administration, as far as like totaling the money allocations in kind and forgiven debt? Does anybody know how much has been contributed in 2022 and 2023 to Juneteenth?
My numbers may be a little off, and Jake, you have them? But I have the first year in 2022, we forgave, I want to say 33,000 plus raised maybe another $80,000 towards it. And then we had some additional costs that we also wrote off, but I don't remember what the total of that first year. The second year, of course, we gave the direct 125. And then with any in-kind on the second year?
No in-kind services on the second year. There are still some outstanding balances related to those services, however, so that number is not fully fixed. But essentially our intended and authorized support last year was $125,000.
Okay. So between money allocations, in-kind, and forgiven debt, we're somewhere around $250,000
Roughly,
in
yes.
support from the city over the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Chief Uwe. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further for second round? Third round, Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. And I just want to say, you're doing such a good job with the PR. Maybe you should get a job in the communications office. I just want to say, it's probably the best PR he's had all week. So I am going to say that. But, and I see other people in the back for the PR department. But I do want to say that we could do this internally like we do other parades. We don't have to put any RFP out. So we could do that. But for me, I don't want to see us using the public dollars. I like the idea of calling the foundations, and I actually have tried calling people and tried working with people. I'm going to be honest, I talked to Diana Bucco, who told me that if I want to get some help with the foundations, we need to talk to you and Felicity. So now I'm going to ask you and Felicity, would you help us with this money for Juneteenth to get the private dollars instead of the public dollars? So it's back at you now.
Well, that would, and I just, to point back to a prior part of this conversation, right? We will need during this year's budget process to think about how financially we support all of these things into the future, because for this year and the past several years, the support has been drawn from ARPA. So I think it would be timely looking at 2025 to have those conversations.
So but I hear you're saying like you're just like so shut off on doing it this year. It seems like you're really like adamant about not doing it this year, and I want to know if there's a reason. Is there a reason why?
When you say adamant about not doing,
Like you're not doing
we have to focus on, because we're doing something new and different. A lot of our resource and effort has to be focused on making the city-sponsored event the best that it can be. And so it's not that we are not willing and open to having a conversation about how we can support any other event, but we have to pour all of our time and attention to making the city one the best it can be.
And so, to further elaborate, the RFP process selected the provider that we are proposing to work with through this legislation. So we have to honor and abide by the results of that process.
The RFP, the one that council didn't approve, right?
Like all the other RFPs, correct?
Well, I don't know about that. We'll see. But okay. But I also want to say, I mean, we had Operation Better Block, and that didn't have an RFP, but we managed to get that in the grant, written into the grant, named in the grant. So I'm just saying that if we wanted to be creative, I think we can be. But for me, I just and I am a big supporter of B. Marshall, but I've always did think that we should do RFPs. I did think so I'm not going to ever argue about that. I do think we should do RFPs, and I think that having the fact that he has done so many in his experience should have given some extra leverage, I think, in his experience in doing it here in Pittsburgh. But honestly, it's one of the bills I'm looking at is considering doing is putting in something where any event that has an economic impact to the city of Pittsburgh, that we do support them and we do things in a way, because there is a cost associated with not doing these things for Pittsburgh, because it brings in a dollar amount, not just B. Marshall's event, but I think there's like probably the Pride Festival probably has a huge impact, economic impact. I don't know what other ones, but I'm sure that there are other ones that I'm just not thinking offhand. But I think that we should probably be supporting those because they support Pittsburgh. And so,
and Councilwoman, if I can, I want to, and we're open to having that conversation. I don't want to drag this on because I got to know when to shut up. But I want to lift up what Councilwoman Gross said, because as a person who had to organize events as a neighborhood level, when you have to pay, my event never brought in more than a couple hundred people, right? But I paid the full rate for police, for barricades, for everything. So $10,000 for this little one-day event is heavy.
Yeah.
And then when I looked out and we had these major events and they were getting in-kind services and they were raising millions of dollars or whatever, it was not an equal transaction. And so what we are trying to do is build a city that is equitable. And we want to encourage small events and large events. So when we start making rules to say for large events, you're going to get this in kind, and for small events, we're going to make you pay the full rate, because somebody has to pay for our public safety and all that. So there's a cost to everything we do. And I think what we're trying to do is create a fair process to make that happen. And so we would love to talk to you as you think this through, but we're trying to create a fair process.
I'm going to work with you on that, because I would tell you that's the same words Bill Peduto said to me. There's a cost associated with everything. I told him the same thing. There's a cost associated with not doing some of these things.
We want to do it. We just need to figure it out.
Yeah, so what I want to do is work with you on it. But I do think we should be doing some things for the littler events, but maybe the cost should be on a sliding scale for those or something. But I think at a certain level, an economic impact to the city should be beneficial and should pay itself off. That's what I'm thinking.
The costs are on a sliding scale now based on the number, the size of the event, the number of needs. It was a more arbitrary process in the past in determining how many police officers, how many barriers. That's now all done by through a standardized process. I think if I could give one piece of advice to folks who are applying for those permits is don't overestimate the size of the crowd you'll have, because the number of officers and other services you need are calculated on the basis of the number of people you expect to serve. So sometimes applications put in a larger number of people than they'll actually generate, and then the cost comes back high because we have to plan a number of officers, for example, that accommodates that number of people.
So I'm going to say I support B. Marshall. I support the RFP. I want the mayor, I've mentioned this from the beginning, I'd like for our mayor to have what he wants. I'm not opposed to having the two events. I'm thinking that we should be trying to work together and try to figure this out. I absolutely think this has not been good for the black community, and I do see the division. I do hear the comments. I do see them. People are texting me as we're sitting here, and it's predominantly from the black community. So I do know that there's a lot going on, and I think that it's having a negative impact where it had such a positive impact. And so I'll probably abstain today, but I will like to have some conversation. I actually need some clarity on some things, which I told you about. I like to get some clarity on a few things. But other than that, I feel like an RFP process was the way to go. I don't want to say that I don't, but I don't also think that B. Marshall probably should have shined in that, because I mean, Boyce Foundation has always written contracts and has done things for people. And although I do want people to work with people, previous administrations have also forgiven bills. That's something that they've done for years, with not just B, but with other events too, because there is an economic impact to the city. And so I think that they've made a lot of cases why they've done that. But for me, I'm just going to wait until get some clarification. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
I appreciate it. I want to also appreciate Chief Whitley for having personal experience with what we're talking about, with kind of the sliding scale, which I understand is now put in place. And again, to the Guinea administration for working through how we encourage and support neighborhood events, neighborhood celebrations, community organizations doing those events, because it's good for the city as a whole. We should be encouraging these things, and for years we were not. We were literally putting obstacles in place and literally actually stopping some of those events from happening. And then it's just a real shame. So, and I do have better feedback from the community organizations who are applying to do those events. So I really appreciate that. I have in front of me the website for an organization that I want everybody to know about, if you don't know about them, the Pennsylvania Association for Nonprofit Organizations. 25, oh my God, I'm getting old. Years ago, I think I used them. They were an association of professionals to assist nonprofits, right? It's a national or state level association. And I was like, I'm trying to file for incorporation of a new nonprofit, and they helped me figure out like how do you get an EIN number, how do you do your federal application, but also how do you write your bylaws, how do you kind of do board management. And they have I have found on my phone, they put out, this is again the Pennsylvania Association for Nonprofit Organizations. They're sending out a piece to all nonprofits in the state, I think it's on their website, of how to advocate to your municipality for them to grant you funds directly as a nonprofit, right? And so if I'm reading this right, it's something, there's literally kind of like template letters to write, how to look up which municipalities in Pennsylvania have gotten how much ARPA funds, how to state your case that you're doing work that's important for the community. And it says directly, do not be shy. Do not be shy about asking for funds for your own work as an organization. Not for a category like, a policy area like childcare, or a policy area like food, like we've done before, or for the arts like we've got in our ARPA budget. But be clear about what you need for what you're doing and how the dollars will be used in your organization. And then ask your local municipality to allocate those specific funds for your specific organization. And so I'm going to continue to say, like I said, and I appreciate Councilman Coghill taking up the banner, that we can allocate these funds for a city to enhance and expand and kind of put in motion a kind of city-sponsored Juneteenth celebration that can move forward and expand. But also, these are ARPA dollars. We need to make sure they move out the door, or we'll have to return them to the federal government. We don't want to do that. And I don't have one that I can, like asking my staff to find me an example so I can run out here. I don't have one in hand, but we'll continue to look for an example of like a city council
either in Pennsylvania or somewhere else, allocating ARPA funds. And especially, I think Juneteenth is a fantastic event to support. Again, we are trying to expand and uplift. We've declared it a city holiday. We're going now to kind of really, I think, do these investments. And again, people at the table have been saying taxpayer dollars. Well, these are specifically American Rescue Plan Act that our federal government has given to municipalities and cities around the country for COVID relief. I will continue to read from the Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations website if you wish, but I don't think I really need to make my point, right? This was here to make up for the negative impact that the economic downturn of COVID had on communities. So yes, to help cities not go bankrupt during the economic downturn, but also to move that money from the city stable to directly organizations who are negatively impacted, especially and specifically arts organizations. And so I also feel comfortable, and Councilman, we don't need the administration to write it for us. We can actually, because City Council has the authority, as Chief Wheatley acknowledged, to allocate funds, and we can put forward that legislation. I'd be happy to do that with you.
And in fact, the
Chief
2023 allocation is an example of that. It is a piece of legislation that named a direct individual recipient for an allocation of funds. We would still need, that as was the case at that time, there would still either need to be a demonstration of a procurement process or a waiver signed off by the solicitor. And this now, as the
I'm not sure that is true. That's where I'm differing with you, but we'll continue to have that conversation.
Nonetheless, the legislation can exist, and we have done it before.
The one thing I want to, and again, I was a former legislator, so I have a lot of deference for legislative authority. But I also want to encourage you in this regard. When you, and I'm glad you lifted this up, a lot of that rescue money specifically was targeted to go to our arts and culture programs that were extremely hit hard by the COVID shutdown. And so anyone or any entity that we give money to do that, we need to make sure they're reporting and that they're spending it with the local artists and organizations, that local people are benefiting from it and not just one individual or national entity. So I think if you're going to have dedicated resources to a private event promoter, I think we should have reporting mechanisms where you see how the money is being spent so that you and the public can be clear that this is having a benefit beyond just that individual and that institution. So I would encourage that, and I think we would be open to partnering and working with you on that.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I believe we've exhausted all conversation on this bill. So I'm going to call it a question. Before I do that, I do want to offer that if there's any questions about ARPA dollars and arts, I'd be happy to engage in that conversation. I've been working very closely with those at the table and Councilman Mosley on that issue. So with that, all those in favor of Bill 472, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Abstentions? One abstention.
I do want to say that B. Marshall did want to say a few words too.
No for me.
And one no.
So I'll call him up for the next thing.
I'm going to abstain as well.
Two abstentions, one no. Okay. Affirmative recommendation. Thank you all for the exhaustive conversation. And we will move on to Bill 473.
Bill 473, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Mark A. Winters for arbitration services for an amount not to exceed $10,311.38 over 1 year.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of Bill 473, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 474.
Bill 474, resolution providing for the sale of certain property acquired by the city of Pittsburgh at tax sales, items A through AN. 225 Wick Street, Council District 6, 223 Wick Street, District 6, 221 Wick Street, District 6, 2303 Center Avenue, District 6, 2301 Center Avenue, District 6, 2518 Wyandotte Street, District 6, 5316 Hillcrest Street, District 9, 0 Laxton Street, District 9, 7004 Leamington Avenue, District 9, 7002 Leamington Avenue, District 9, 7000 Leamington Avenue, District 9, 7100 Monticello Street, District 9, 7030 Monticello Street, District 9, 335 Hell Street, District 9, 333 Hell Street, District 9, 327 Hell Street, District 9, 7925 Susquehanna, District 9, 4417 Chatworth Street, District 5, 4500 Monongahela Street, District 5, 4502 Monongahela Street, District 5, 119 Millbridge Street, District 3, 965 East Warrington Avenue, District 3, 121 Millbridge Street, District 3, 0 Proctor Way, District 3, 1520 Arlington Avenue, District 3, 1526 Arlington Avenue, District 3, 417 Michigan Street, District 3, 233 Augusta Street, District 2, 613 Herschel Street, District 2, 611 Herschel Street, District 2, 513 Lovelace Street, District 2, 2680 Sacramento Avenue, District 2, 2678 Sacramento Avenue, District 2, 823 Sussman Street, District 1, 1217 Voskamp Street, District 1, 2652 Ellis Street, District 6, 323 Venture Street, District 1, 215 Suncrest Street, District 3, 1635 Maryland Street, District 5, and 1633 Maryland Street, District 5.
Discussion?
Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Yeah. Do we have someone here to talk about it? Well, there's a lot of properties in my district. I'm not sure if Kim asked for some of these to be moved or if somebody's just moving them. Okay.
Can I see it by any chance, this legislation?
And Councilwoman, we're calling the person who is
Okay.
scheduled to be here as
Okay.
well. In
Oh,
addition,
okay.
in
Oh,
addition,
okay.
so please,
I'm
no,
sorry.
please feel free in the meantime to
I
sit
would have
down
some
and try to-
ancillary knowledge.
Well, you can still say what you turn your mic on.
Jack Miller for the City Law Department.
Okay. Do you know what there's here? If
It'd
you
just be
want-
helpful to see. Oh.
Does just have the same thing you have?
Yeah, just the same
Sorry.
thing. I was wondering if there's a copy of the text.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross.
Same.
The clerk is on it. Well, you know what? I'm okay with just moving this now,
I'm
and then
unfamiliar with this.
I'll delete them if I don't like what it is next week. Okay.
I'm also comfortable if I think we're making a call now if we would like to move ahead and come back to this bill.
Yeah. No.
Your preference.
Okay, we'll leave it open.
Is it the cost to the Finance Department? Is that-
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Cale Smith, what's your pleasure?
I just want to know what the properties for District 2.
Got it, okay.
There's so many different ones all over the place.
Thank you, Councilwoman
Thank you.
Warwick.
I just a real quick, for when the real estate department, so the buyers are listed in the text files.
Yeah.
I mean, like, out myself, but I don't always, I'm not looking at all the text files of the agenda every time, so it would be I had already emailed earlier, because we had a very long previous discussion, so I got the information I needed from real estate just with a quick email, but it would be helpful to just have a heads up, like, hey, there's some properties, these are the
Yeah.
addresses, and then we can either look at the text file or these are the buyers, and that way we just do a quick check.
Yeah, Kim in our office usually talks to them, but I want to say that they used to give us that update before they even put them on the agenda.
He's on the way up.
So this didn't happen. So we didn't have to hold them.
Is the request, we have, I believe, Mr. Pickett on the way up. Is
Okay,
the
thank you.
request then to add, similar to what we did with the district number, to add the buyer in the title of the bill? Is that the request?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I guess I was sort of more thinking like, I know the URA, whenever the URA has something that comes before their board meeting, they just shoot me a quick email that says, hey, there's some District 5 stuff and these are the, these are the
Here he
items.
is. He's here right now.
Thank you. You're welcome to come up to the table.
I don't really have any questions. I just.
Thank you. Understood.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further for first round? Second round, Councilwoman Kale Smith.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself for the public?
Aaron Pickett, real estate manager.
Aaron, did Kim work with you on these properties?
Yeah, I spoke with her.
So these are all ones. Could you tell me? Do you know what they are offhand?
I think there was some sat yards on there, and then
this one's not.
And some properties that her and I discussed.
Yeah, this is not a side yard. Okay, these are not side yards. There's an awful lot of properties on here. Could you just get me the information?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
And from now on, whenever you send it to her, please copy me on it.
Okay,
Thank
I will.
You. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 474, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain till
Aye. Affirmative, one abstention, one affirmative recommendation. Thank you. Bill 475.
Thank you, Aaron.
Bill 475,
Sorry.
resolution providing for the conveyance by the City of Pittsburgh of certain property having been placed for sale to adjoining property owners in conjunction with the City of Pittsburgh Side Yard Program, items A through F, 7317 Ottawa Street, District 9, 0 Hazelwood Avenue, District 5, 0 Freeland Street, District 3, 210 Sylvania Avenue, District 3, 2651 Veteran Street, District 6, and 2415 Dill Avenue, District 4.
We have a motion.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 475, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation.
And I love that side yard program. I just want to say that.
Bill 480.
Bill 480, resolution further amending resolution number 855 of 2011, effective December 29, 2011, as amended, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2012 Capital Budget and the 2012 Community Development Block Grant Program, and approving the 2012 through 2017 Capital Improvement Program by adjusting various line items in conformance with City Council's 2012 capital budget amendments by reducing District 1 neighborhood needs by $3,751.84 and increasing public safety cameras by $3,751.84.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 480, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to invoices. Do we have a motion to approve invoices?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of invoices, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Invoices are approved. That moves us on to interdepartmental transfers. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of interdepartmental transfers, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Transfers are approved. That moves us on to P cards. Do I have a motion to approve P cards?
I just need to look through them real quick.
Motion to approve. Sorry.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. Discussion? I will note for council members' benefit that in consultation with the council budget office, there were 4 PayPal purchases. 2 of them came with invoices, came with receipts. We requested more information about 2 additional ones and were able to see the receipts. So there were receipts for the services rendered for the 4 PayPal transactions.
So where are they? This?
I see 3 of them on page 2, toward the top in Parks and Rec.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I see them.
2 were for Parks and Rec, Nancy Burns paying to PayPal Sam 306 and PayPal Timothy Sullivan. And then
Our budget office sees, I want to make sure our budget director.
So
I'll trust them when it comes to the budget.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, these were brought to our attention by our council budget office, by our budget director.
Well, let me say, good job, Pete, okay? Thank you, Director.
And further inquiry then uncovered exactly what the services were performed for those that did not have a receipt attached to it. So council leadership has at least seen, and if anyone would like to see them, I'm sure we can make them public, but to council members, but I wanted to let you know that there has been oversight onto the 4 PayPal transactions for the P cards, and they were for, there were receipts attached to them.
Just to be clear, our solicitor, city council solicitor, and our budget director and our clerk are still all approving everything that goes on here. It's not, and if they tell you no about something, you let us know that, right?
Correct.
Okay, I mean, you're not just, I want to make sure council's getting shared that information. Okay, thank you. So if they're good, I'm good.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of P cards, please indicate by saying aye.
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 P cards are approved.
No?
1 no.
Well, oh, yeah, I told
One
him I'd vote no with him. I'm sorry, no. I'm sorry.
2.
I forgot.
2 opposed. P cards are approved. That moves us on to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee chaired by Councilwoman Warwick.
Bill 476, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure to enter into a license and maintenance agreement for limited-term public art with Bike Pittsburgh, Inc., a nonprofit corporation having a mailing address at 188 43rd Street, Suite 1. Said limited-term public art to be installed on the surface of the public right-of-way in a section of roadway in front of the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh Woods Run Branch located at 1201 Woods Run Avenue at no additional cost to the city.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill, 476, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Recreation, Youth, and Senior Services Committee chaired by Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Bill 471, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Parks and Recreation on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into a professional services agreement with Green Gears for waste management services in conjunction with the city of Pittsburgh's Independence Day Festival at an amount not to exceed $22,300.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
We have a second?
I just want to make sure that you know that I did ask, was there an RFP, and they did say yes. So that's all.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 471, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee chaired by Councilwoman Gross.
Bill 469, resolution amending Resolution 586 of 2023, authorizing the mayor and the directors of the Departments of Innovation and Performance and Public Safety on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements and amendments thereto with OST Inc. as needed to fulfill a number of critical IT and device-related projects related to database management and migration and software development to replace key systems by increasing the approved amount by $200,000 and extending the contract by 1 additional year for an total cost not to exceed $626,346.02 over 4 years.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 469, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 470.
Bill 470, resolution amending Resolution 360 of 2021, authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to adopt an existing government contract and enter into any related agreements through the National Association of State Procurement Officials Cooperative Purchasing Program with Cherry Road Technologies, permitting the provision of cloud solutions to support the JDE application by increasing the approved amount by $1,341,442.56 for an amended total cost not to exceed $2,391,442.56 over 7 years.
Motion to approve, brief discussion.
Second.
Brief discussion. Councilwoman
Thank you.
Gross.
I would like to bring up our IMP staff so that they can talk about this in more detail than I can. Appreciate it. Thank you. So this is a larger amount, and as I've said before, I really appreciate how methodically IMP is kind of going through every department with every one of the softwares that we have been granting over the years, right? There were years where we were sitting here going like, gosh, this is adding up now, when individual departments were kind of launching into their own databases, and we were granting contracts for the law department to have software, and this department to have software, that department to have software. I'm just going to admit that I sat here pretty much on the same, almost the same number, that seat or this seat, and said, just because a salesperson is bringing you some fancy thing with a lot of bells and whistles doesn't mean you're ever going to use them, or you know how to use them, or it's relevant to your department. And we should really get a handle on how many millions of dollars we're spending on technology, specifically online technology now. When 10 years ago when I started here, you actually got like some CD-ROMs of the hardware or the software yourself, and you owned it, and now you don't. It's all on the cloud. But I have been really encouraged to have briefings from INP on how methodically they are doing that exact thing. And I know the previous chairperson of this committee is saying the same thing, is nodding her head, that they're literally systematically going through every single department, every single piece of software to make sure that the capacities match the needs, and that we are negotiating those contracts. But again, you can't just RFP it like you do rock salt, because you can't just say, oh, well, suddenly your software's gone and you don't have staff and secretaries, you don't have a paper trail. I mean, we also have the responsibility and the onus of keeping the public records and keeping things functioning. So with that introduction, can you tell us a little bit more, introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about this specific bill?
Senior Manager of Applications.
Can you bring your mics maybe a little closer?
sorry,
I feel like
sorry.
you're not
So
getting
in-
onto the speakers.
Yes, I believe in 2021, we issued an RFP for our JDE service. to
Oh, that's
have it-
not long.
Can you hear me?
No, I was glad to hear it was so recent. Okay, go
Yes,
I'm
in
sorry.
2021, we issued an RFP. As you know, in the past, we had the Allegheny County managed all of our JDE services, the service center. And we did an analysis and understood that we would save quite a bit of money, up to $1 million over 5 years, by bringing that in-house. But we knew that we did not want to have the JDE databases and services on-prem on our servers. So we issued an RFP for a SaaS-based, for the system to be housed in the cloud. And this Cherry Road does house a service for us in the cloud. We need to extend that agreement because we don't have a replacement for JDE yet. As you know, that's going to be millions of dollars. We do have a strategic plan to try to implement that over several years once we issue an RFP for that. But at this point, we need to continue to have our JDE system housed in the cloud by Cherry Road. And Cherry Road is on a national agreement. So with that, a cooperative agreement, it has been bid out over, across the United States, and different entities can take advantage of that pricing.
So this is more like one of those, and it's been only me, so I've forgotten the name, where we are and basically piggybacking on another RFP.
Correct.
Okay, so again, those kind of, I think there's a more legal name than piggyback, but we use those.
That's the legal name in
That
the
is the
contract.
legal, okay, great. The legal name
Yes.
actually is a piggyback contract. So while it wasn't an internal RFP.
No, it
that
was.
this- Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
we did internally RFP in 2021 for the JDE on the cloud, but you're saying that there is additionally a national RFP for the Cherry
The pricing
Road
the pricing
technologies.
they presented in their response reflected the national contract.
Right.
So we just took advantage of that.
We took advantage on a piggyback of the national contract.
Correct.
So both things good. And just to, we don't need to go into detail because again, we're almost at the end of the meeting. But there were also many years when we were under the joint county-city contract with JDE that as the city, we had a tremendous difficulty with our accounting, with our bookkeeping, with our check payments, with even payroll, and it was meant to be cost savings and was not. And so it was good, again, the council supported this recent kind of breaking of the joint county, city accounting JDE. So that's not what we're talking about here. Those problems have been fixed. And so we have our own, but it's cloud-based, and the Cherry Road Technologies is who we contract with to provide the cloud-based services. Okay, just checking in. I think that's probably enough clarification from me. If council members have any other questions.
Any further discussion?
I'm good.
No. Thank you very much. All those in favor of Bill 470, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you again for being here.
Have a great day.
Yeah,
Thank
too.
you.
Good to see you.
Great day.
Thanks.
Having exhausted all our meeting agenda, that moves us on to meeting announcements. On Monday, May 27th, Council and Clerk's office will be closed in observance of Memorial Day. Council will hold its both meetings on Wednesday, May 29th, with regular meeting at 10 a.m. and the standing committees meeting at 1:30 p.m. Speaker registration will close on the 29th at 9 a.m. for the regular meeting and 12:30 p.m. for the standing committees meeting. To register to speak at council meetings, please fill out the sign-up form in its entirety on the council meeting webpage. You may also register by calling the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Any further comment from members? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting?
So move.
All in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.